How's it going on, guys? Hope all we're doing, and welcome to a brand new video tutorial. This is my new video tutorial actually on the freeCodeCamp. It's Mahmoud, and hopefully you can actually enjoy this tutorial as I'm actually enjoying making this and creating the application we're gonna do today. So for today's one, what we're gonna probably do is create a really awesome and cool React weather application. So we're gonna just go ahead step by step from scratch, start up a project, create a React application, and create all the different components and stuff like this, put them together with the CSS styles and different things actually to be handled. And we are actually gonna go ahead and go through creating a full weather application with RESTful APIs, and we're gonna just go ahead and use some things, actually some help from APIs, actually public APIs using the RESTful HTTP APIs. Like this API axios, so we can get the weather data and the forecast for probably a couple of days actually, and for current weather data for any city we want. For example, we want the current city that we are actually in, and we can get all of the different data actually. If you don't know me, this is actually my learning website, iPanis.com, and hopefully you can go ahead and check out the channel down there, so we can have like millions of other tutorials like this, really awesome cool tutorials and stuff like that, the other one for web development. So let's go ahead and try to get started. So the final application, or the prototype we're going to work on, this is actually the thing that we try to achieve throughout this tutorial. So hopefully you can just go ahead and imagine this in your head. I've tried to put a prototype together in here, just a quick one using Figma. So for those of you who doesn't know Figma is just like a prototyping tool. You can just go to figma.com. It's a pretty nice prototyping tool. You can go ahead and just go ahead and use it, even though you're not that much of UX designer or something. It simplifies your life as a web developer actually, and it gives you a lot of all the cool, awesome features that you can use to prototype such an application. So actually here we've got the weather title, we've got the location name, which is gonna probably basically just your location name, like London or something. We've got number of degrees, or the actual current weather, and we've got whether it's sunny or it's dark. For example, since it's night, it's just gonna show a logo or an image of like darkness, like a moon, to show up that we are actually at night. Otherwise we show a sun, so we are pretty much at day, and we sell them like even if it's sunny or with some clouds or partially cloudy or something like this, something specifically for a weather application and the weather forecast and everything. We can also have just simply this one, this little tiny button here that allows you to select probably a location. We can just go and click that to get a pop-up, and we can actually search for a location. We set the name of the location, and there we go. The location is just going to go ahead and change up or layout up in the background. We're going to try to make all of that from scratch, and hopefully you can actually enjoy that and get the experience behind creating like a really awesome application using React. Even though you're actually new, you still need to actually follow up the tutorial and try to figure out how things are actually working behind the scenes. And in the future part in here, the bottom part, what we're gonna probably do is just like, show the forecast for the couple of next days, like the 4 next days or something like this. Just gonna show what is going on in the next couple of days, like Sunday, Monday. You got the point actually. And the Celsius degrees, we can use thirds or Celsius. I prefer Celsius in this case. Like, more details about the weather for this particular days, like whether it's sunny or cloudy or whatever thing. You got pretty much the point of how a weather application works. So let's just go ahead and try to get it started. For React application, if you are a React developer, you probably heard about or used Create React App, the command line tool that allows you to create quickly and set up applications or React projects very easily without any hassles or problems or that much of configuration. So I'm gonna use Create React App. So probably you need to open up a terminal in here, or you can even use CMD if you're Windows. I'm using CMD in here, and you create React app. I'm gonna put weather app. Okay, simple as that. I just type in this one, and it's probably just going to start creating it for us, and it downloads and resolve dependencies like the React script, and the different packages that allows us to do so. And there we go. The setup and the creation of the project has been successfully done. Now we can just go ahead and use our favorite editor to start working on the application. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. It's just, you know, like very awesome and very elegant. You can use whatever IDE you pretty much like. So I'm going to just go inside of the weather app folder that has been created for us from the create react apps.li, and I'm just going to use a code to open it. Just type in code dots, and it opens this project on a brand new instance of Visual Studio Code. So waiting for this, just the project to load and everything, and hopefully everything can pretty much work fine. So first things first to do whenever you create a React project, especially using the create react apps CLI, is actually to test it and try to just go ahead and run the start script to see actually what is going on behind the scenes. So let me just get rid of that. I don't really need it anymore. I'm going to open up a new terminal instance of the integrated terminal from Visual Studio Code, and okay, now let's try to run the script, which is npm run start, so we can you know, make sure that the application has been set up and created successfully without any problems or missing dependencies or something, so we can start developing the application without any problems. So I actually decided to start the development process of this particular application from the scratch, like by creating projects and show you everything going on behind the scenes. So probably when people faces errors and doesn't know actually how to go or how to start or something like this, so yeah, they would have a problem and they would try to fix it by just, you know, following up from just the beginning, from scratch, and just to make you guys feel comfortable following it along this one. And there we go. So the server is actually starting without any problems. npm didn't actually throw up any error or yeah, no exception at all. So everything hopefully works pretty much fine. If you take a look, the application, this is actually the main app.js file, so we can actually use this for it's the main components that is being rendered. So I can wait for a couple of seconds actually to make this actually running on. It's taking quite some time. There we go, and there we go. We've got the application working in the boiler pad is actually running without any problems or issues. So now we've got to simply just go ahead and start working on the application. So starting off, let's just try to since our application, if you take a look, we're gonna use actually the prototype a lot. Let me just zoom in here so you can clearly see what's going on. I'm gonna create first the container or the actual main components that are gonna pass all the props to this particular data. So in this case, I'm gonna create I'm gonna create a new file, and I'm gonna use some kind of a flux like flux state management. You're probably familiar with it or not. It's just like a design pattern for React applications that allows you to pass data between props very, very easily. And as we all know that you can only pass data from a parent to a child, not the vice versa thing, like passing it from a child to a parent. So we actually need some global data to be accessed from the old actual components that is being rendered on the hierarchy, and on the other hand we can have like a main upstate that holds the upstate actually of all components, like the shared upstate between all the different components. So any component in the hierarchy, any components being rendered on our application can actually access the data and alter the data and set the states and change all the different things. So it's a really, really important thing to know. Even though our applications is very basic, straight to the point, it doesn't really need the flex design pattern, but I just want to point you guys there too. I'm gonna use it in this one for you actually guys, so you can take later on the source code and just develop it, take it to the next level, add more features to it, and make it just a real world weather application, so you can easily add the features without any problems whenever you find it's actually already been built on top of this design pattern. So I'm gonna name this, for example, it's gonna be the store. So why I'm naming it store? Because it stores the critical global upstate. So yeah, store.js, it's gonna be a normal component, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do like import react, okay, from React, and I'm gonna do yeah, it's gonna be a normal React component. I'm just gonna do export default, and let's try, okay, so it's gonna be class. I'm gonna create a class in here, I'm gonna name it store, and it's gonna extend as normally react.components. Okay, there we go. And it's going to be having a constructor or something. You can initialize any data, you can pass in props to this constructor, which is not really that much of a big deal, but yeah, still worth having in here. We can have like a main upstate in here, which is like, this is going to be it. So and I can give you like hints by commenting this, like main up state. Okay, and we can have a render function, and what we want is all of the children that's going to be inside of that is actually or any children that we're going to pass to this one is going to render it just inside the store. We're going to have passed to them the state we have in here, whatever data you have in here. For example, try to put some data like the name or like the application name, and I'm just going to put like the application name is going to be weather up. So yeah, and here we try to return whatever like props dot children thing, but this doesn't actually how it works. What you want is to take the state, every single piece of data that is inside of this state or the state that we're having is just we need to pass it down into the hierarchy. So whatever the child is gonna get it is gonna get it as a props. So to do so, we're gonna just use the help of props and children alongside react clone element function, or the method that allows us to clone elements very easily into components and passing the props down. So here I'm gonna like return, and it's gonna be a map function. Just gonna use react dots children, and for this react dot children I'm gonna use the map function. So the map function, you need to pass it whatever child, so we can do react children. So we need to access the props. I totally forgot about it. I thought I'm gonna use it actually as stateless components, and we can actually render that here. And what I wish to use, well, we've got a serious issue in here. So I don't know, clearly something is actually going on, but and yeah. So I think we having. Let me take a look on this one. Okay, the map components taking actually children. Okay, so we need just to pass in the children, my bad. Here, so this dot props dot children, and the next thing it takes a callback with a child, and we can use this. So yeah, I'm totally screwing up keys right now. So you probably see me typing in really weird error things and just stupid errors. Anyway, so here we can use the child. What we're gonna probably return for each single child gonna be passed into this. We're gonna probably just render one single child. It's gonna be the up components that we're gonna render inside of this. So we're gonna return, and I'm gonna return like react dot clone elements, and this clone elements, it takes an actual element which is going to be the child. So the child is actually a real world react valve element, and it takes the second thing. You can clearly see here, it takes whatever props you want to pass into this child, and it just creates a brand new components with this props being passed into. So the props you want is, for example, is actually the state that we have in up there. So I can easily need to mutate this state. So I'm going to do this dot state, and you make sure to mutate this using this expand symbol thing, or the actual expand objects iterator in here. So just to, like, you know, merge an objects, this is an object with another object, and why I'm doing in here, just merging the state objects with an empty object so we can create a different object rather than state. So here if we try just to pass in the state, just gonna pass in the reference of the state. We don't want that. We want to mutate the actual state and pass it down to the child, so we can have the same props as we do for the actual state. So it's going to be as simple as that. Everything in here is going to have the up name. Whatever we add in here is just going to be right over there. So yeah, it's pretty good pattern in here. It's basically not the best thing you can have. You can have Redux or a Flux. Flux actually have many different ways to be implemented on. So it's just like very basic and a very efficient way. I actually have and I use a lot of my other projects. So hopefully you can actually like it. And everything, this is just simply it, the store.js. Now we can jump back into the up.js. Probably on the whole rendering, I don't need any of this, and I can just get rid of it. And what I want, since I need the styling, so I'm just gonna put another file. So I've got in here, what is it? Actually, the store. Inside the src, I'm gonna put another folder named it sass. So it's gonna hold our sass files, and for actually working with sass and in Node.js, or probably create a React app, you've got to go ahead and install node-sass. So to do so, let me just go ahead and do this. So npm install node-sass. Make sure to do this. If you want to use less or something, you can use the actual compiler for less, but we want to use sass just only for development purposes. I'm just gonna install this for development purposes. Now actually have been installed successfully. Now we can use sass very easy. So I'm just gonna do in here, create a new file. I'm gonna name this probably just up.sass. So it's just gonna be the main application style inside of this folder. You can have a different ways to create that and structure it, but yeah, it's the best thing for me. So it's actually better to change this from JS to JSX. So Visual Studio Code, any other IDE can actually recognize this as a real JSX files, and it can actually activate some features for us like emits, and we can use some HTML features or JSX features in this one. Or you can easily just go in down here, select JavaScript and search for React JavaScript and change it. But I would like very much to change the name in here and rename it. Just add in JSX and clearly see the icon changes into recognizing JSX or JavaScript and React, and probably gonna get another error. So for this, what we're gonna probably do is just simply go into the index.js, and it doesn't actually recognize any of that. I can just add the JSX in here and everything should pretty much work fine. Yep. And yeah, we've got a completely different awkward situation that is actually happening from this, and I still can't quite actually figure out why, but yeah. So if I try to recompile this, npm run start again, and yeah, we've got a completely different error, which is like React scripts are not defined. Welcome, Mr. Errors. Okay, so errors are starting up. Let's just try to fix this with npm install React-scripts. This sometimes happens when you actually configure a create React app project. Then you actually install some other dependencies, as we did just install the node-sass. So it basically, I don't know, some kind of a really hard bug. It deletes the React script, or it removes it from the pack.json. So this is a really, really bad thing to do. I should actually submit some issue, or some other people actually should submit an issue into the actually the GitHub issues for the Create React app, and they can let the developers fix this as soon as possible, because it's very, very annoying for developing things in here. Now actually everything is working pretty much fine after installing the React scripts. I don't know, it's just a serious bug. Anyway, so just like, rendering a div in here just for testing purposes, and it pretty much working fine without any problems. As you can clearly see in here, we've got the React. And let me just open up the dev tool so we can clearly see what is going on behind the scenes. Now what I'm gonna probably do, just put a div in here. I'm just gonna put a div. I'm gonna put a class name for the div, and let's try to put the class name. I don't know, like this is gonna be the main container. Then we're gonna have just a smaller container inside of it. So it's just gonna name it like main container, okay? And inside of that, what we're gonna have is, well, another container. So just gonna put another class name, which is gonna hold, well, let's name this, or let me just rename this like up container. The problem is actually with renaming, so the majority of problems are naming your variables and your classes and your IDs and different things. So just to have them nicely remembering and stuff like this. So I'm gonna name, like, I don't know, what is this? Name main container, okay. I'm gonna be just main container in here, and we can just go ahead and play with the style a little bit. So we're gonna have a CSS style, which is gonna be the up container first. Let me just first put the body and the HTML. So I'm gonna start with HTML and say body. I don't know, I named it sass, okay? I shouldn't have done that. I should name this as CSS, okay? Now it should work. So body, and it can put 100%. Okay, width is gonna be 100%. The height is gonna be the same, so 100% height as well. Well, we're just gonna use the box sizing. So I'm just gonna put box sizing to border box. This is the best box sizing that you can use actually for your application. It's the best thing actually for having a smooth layouts and responsive design. So yeah, this is basically what we should have done. And let's try to get our classes. So first I have app container, and inside of it I'm just gonna use sass. So I'm just gonna put inside of it, I'm gonna have main container, okay, and this is gonna have like the width of 100%, so 100, okay. The problem is actually with typing most of the time, so yeah, 100% as well. And okay, it's very hard actually to type and talk at the same time, so you got the point pretty much. I'm gonna use flex display in here just to display things smoothly, and you can center things or align them in the center. So what I want to take this one, yeah, have it stopped. Okay, let me just refresh that. What I want is actually to have them all in the center in here, just the weather application, the whole container of the application is going to be in the center, and we don't really care about the other thing that we have. So this is what I mean, this is just going to be it, and the other one is just like the outside page. So we just only care about the inner container of the application in here. The weather application is going to be the main container. I'm going to have like flex dash, okay, I'm going to just do justify content to center and align items to center, so we can have a perfectly centered thing. So let me just refresh that really quick. Hopefully, I'm just not including the style anyway, so let me just go ahead and try to include the style just by importing it. I'm going to import this style, so I'm just going to sass and up.css, so up.css, there we go. Just saving that, recompiling it. Should now we have them like horizontally centered but not vertically, and most of the time the problem is actually with vertically centered. So I've got the body taking the full heights, everything's taking the full heights, but the root is not. So what I want is just like to add the same thing to the ID of fruits. Simple as that. Now there we go, we've got them perfectly centered right over here in the center, and the container is actually probably just the main container is actually working fine without any problems. And you can put some constraints into it, so you can put width, and or I can put like minimum width of that. It's gonna be I don't know, 300 pixels or something like this. Let me just go ahead and copy the pixels of this. This has 993, and you know, let's just go and try to copy this of the main width. It's quite large. So I'm gonna try to put 600 pixels or something like this. Okay, that seems pretty decent, not really that much of bad. And I can put height. The height is actually always fixed, and I can put about 400 pixels of height. And if you take a look at that, I think it's quite a lot. So we can actually take this to 300. Okay. Yeah, 300 seems quite decent without any problems. So clearly see in here just the actual hovering and the outline. It shows pretty good. So let me just copy this, put them right over here, and it should pretty much work. And also I'm gonna put a display flex into here, so we can have this container as well. We're gonna be flex designed. I'm just gonna add a couple of things in here. I'm just gonna add, for example, well, let's try to add some borders so we can clearly see. I'm just gonna add a pixel with a solid, and I'm gonna add about 222, or let's try 888, so we can have a decent okay, let's try 999, so we can have a decent gray here. And I'm gonna add the border radius as well. So for a border radius, I'm gonna 3 pixels, and I'm gonna say solid. So, okay, I don't know, I added solid, but I'm gonna say 4 pixels or even 3 pixels, a little bit much better. I'm just gonna copy everything in here. Okay, just copying it is actually a pain. Just copy pasting it. Okay, there we go. And what I want in here to design and actually to structure the application, we're gonna have 2 different halves. The first half is the top half, and we have actually the bottom half. And this is actually the main container. So the main container is gonna be flexed, like flexed box. So it's gonna use the display flex, and you're gonna have to split this into half. So we're gonna have the up section, or the top section, and the bottom section, both of them. So we've got to go ahead and just add those exactly the same as we want them. So up.js, and we can actually go ahead and try to put them right over there. So I'm just gonna do, this is the main container, I'm gonna add in here dots top section, and we're gonna have another one, so it's gonna be bottom section. There we go. And this is going to be actually the top section. I'm just going to put top on it so we can like easily structure these things, and we can put them together without any problems. And probably here we're going to use, since we want them in rows, not columns, so we're going to change this to actually flex display or flex direction to better say. So you can clearly see the flex column, flex main axis has the same orientation. So this is actually what we want. So we want them actually both columns, like this first column and the second column in here. So I'm just gonna save that, and this should hopefully, there we go. So this first column, this second column, as we said, and we've got the main container in here, but this is not taking the full width. How to do so? I'm gonna use the basis or flex main attribute in here to set this. I'm gonna set 100% for both of them, but actually it takes them out of control. So I'm just gonna say 50% out of the width. So they have, the top has the first top and the bottom actually has what's left from it. I'm just gonna need to copy this from it, and it should pretty much work fine. So inside of that, it's gonna be the main container. I'm just gonna put both of them. So just top section. I'm gonna put flex and also the bottom section. So and flex right over there. So if we try to refresh that, there we go. We've got both of them. This is the top, this is the bottom, and they have like a completely separate paths from actually, you know, different things in here without any problems or issues. So we've got them covered successfully. Let's just go and try now to work for the top half and try to display some actually data that we can actually later on change and make it dynamic. We just need to put for now just a static data. So later on we can, I don't know, hook up or just try to call an API and get the data and make it actually work as a dynamic thing. As actually, you know, changes every single day, changes whenever you choose a location, it changes over, you know, when time passes and so on and so forth. So we can actually visualize a real world application or weather application. But for now, we just need to get the data out there, just need to structure it and start with the CSS, like to put the data. So this is actually what you want, whether you're actually designing or creating a React application, whether another vanilla JavaScript application, any framework you're actually using, Angular, Vue.js. So this is actually the steps that I would recommend for you guys to go through for every project, for every application, either a simple or a huge application. Of course, when you're dealing with a large application, you're going to need to prototype a lot. You're going to put your classes inside of like UML or some diagrams in order to simplify this kind of things for you and make them easier for you actually to reach and understand the whole complexity for large application. But never mind, actually, just for a simple one, just need to prototype like this. Just get things up, put them statically like text in here so you can easily visualize them and, you know, design your interface first, then add the functionality to it. So jumping in here, since we're going to work on the top corner of it, I'm just going to put it that. I'm going to go to inside of the src, create another folder. I'm going to name this folder like components. So it's going to hold all the components. Just the best practice actually when it comes to React applications is to put your side components, your like, you know, small components into a different folder called components. Then you can actually call them from the main application components. I'm going to create the first one. It's going to be top.jsx. So, and I'm going to create another one. It's going to be the bottom.jsx. So you can actually name them whatever. But just, you know, naming like this would be pretty good. I'm gonna import first React from Reacts as we always do. So, and I am gonna just export defaults, a normal component, stateful component. Actually, not gonna work with stateless components in this case. I'm gonna say top, top section. Let's name it like this. It's a little bit much better. I'm gonna React.components. And it's gonna have a constructor as all of them does, and it takes a props, and actually we can call super props, and we can have a state and an empty object of state and just a render function very simply. And this return render function, what it does, it just like returns another container. You can actually use I don't know, we can use it like a div for this case, and you can put something like this inside of it. just for a quick visualization, you can copy all the things in here and put it in the bottom without any problem. Just changing this to bottom section and going here, changing it, and there we go. Just, you know, you've got two separate files, two separate sections for you ready to go. Now jumping back into the app.js, and here we can import our sections. So I'm gonna do imports, okay, top section, and from the components folder, I'm gonna go inside of components, grab the top, and there we go. So I'm just gonna go ahead and render this section inside of here, and okay, and there we go. It does have no props actually, so we can easily just render it simply just by calling the component like this, and it should pretty much work as in clear right here. Now we can just move with the developments into the top.jsx instead of putting all the code inside app.js, because it's way much better for you know, civil applications. So you can distribute it with your team. People can actually read it and understand what's happening behind the scenes, rather than just putting all the chunk of your code logic and application logics and the UI and, you know, just mix them all together inside of a file. That's going to be really painful for a lot of people actually who's going to read your code. So make sure to do so in the right way. Here, if we take a look on the prototype, what we want is first to get the title up, and the title is actually going to be centered right over here. So we're going to use the display flex, and let's go and get this out of the way. So I'm just going to create a class in here. Class name, I'm going to name this, for example, I don't know, let's try to top container. Okay, that seems quite decent. Instead of the top container, we're going to have the top title, and we're going to have actually another stateless component. I'm just going to create it down here just in a second. So I'm going to have, this is actually the title. I'm going to say div.title. I'm just going to name it like this for the class name, and here I'm going to say this is going to be actually the weather up. I just try to name the application actually weather up instead of like weather up like this. And it actually means the weather up always, so always actually get your weather or something. You can choose another meaningful name for the application. Of course, I'm not that much of person who actually does the name, you know, selection or something like this. I'm not good at it at all. So yeah, hopefully you can just go ahead and figure out a better name for this, and let me know why not. So yeah, it's going to be the weather application. Jumping into the style, let me just move this into alongside the top.js in there. Here we're going to have, so the title, but instead of the top section, and we're going to have actually this actual container, so it's going to be the top container, or we can easily just move it right over here, so it's not going to be having any bad shit. But the best thing is not to mix the app.css or the main CSS styles, all of them, just put them in one single file. This is going to be really painful as well. So you need for each component to split the CSS or split the style for them and put each style on a separate file for each component. And when I talk for each component is actually when you have big components, like components that plays major roles on the development of application. When it comes to a component, for example, to a button, is actually if you're gonna reuse this button across the whole pages of your application, a lot of other components gonna depend on this button. You obviously gonna go ahead and do the style for them separately in a separate style sheet file. So it's gonna be way much better for you actually, guys. I'm gonna put here another one which is gonna be the top style, or the best way actually to go with this one is, let me just go ahead and show you this. I'm going to create another folder. I'm going to name this top. I'm going to create another one. I'm going to name it bottom. So we can just copy this and put this in the top. It says move, okay. And it actually, Visual Studio Code likely tells you to, or notifies you if you want to update the imports for the moved files. I'm going to say yes, okay. I'm going to take the bottom as well, move it in here, and it's going to ask us again. So hopefully it does actually the asking. I don't know, something is actually wrong with this. Anyway, so I'm just gonna rename this into index.js, and what I'm doing in here is just gonna, like, whenever we try to access the top, just only the top directory in here or the top folder, it automatically knows that we want the index.js. If you specify another file name, obviously just gonna go ahead and import the file name for you. Simple enough. I'm gonna change this as well in here. I'm just gonna put it index.js. So now we have like, this is the bottom, this is the main entry point of it, and we can put some style files in here. I'm just gonna put like style.scss for this. And I'm gonna create another one in here, so it's gonna be style.scss. Pretty great. Here we're gonna have the style for the actual top file. So let me just move this into it. It's actually in the top. So we're gonna have the top container. It's gonna be the main container. Inside of it we have a title, and the top container, as I've said, is gonna be a display flex. So it's gonna have like a flex display, and flex direction is gonna be a column. So columns actually just, you know, like to display them vertically in here. So yeah, instead of horizontally, if you want horizontally, you can use the row instead of the column. You can use also reverse row, reverse column, and stuff like this. Here I'm gonna put, for example, let me just set the font family for this one so we can easily change it later on. I'm just gonna say font family. I'm gonna use the oxygen. If it is actually defined for your browser or something, I'm gonna use as well sans serif instead of it. In case this is not defined, we will just, you know, fall back into the sans serif. Fonts, I'm gonna set a font size. So the font size is gonna be about 22 pixels because it's kind of a title, so we want it to show up and line in here. And we're gonna have like a color for it. So the color is gonna be FFF for completely white. And yeah, so this is basically what we want. So here we need to center it, since we want this into the actual center. So we probably, what we want is all of the other components, actually we want them into the center. So we can just take this and put it right over there. So we will think more about this select location. We can have this button, let me just move this. So we can have this button moved out into right here. We don't have to do anything with the other spaces in there. Yeah, we can have that, but it depends on you and how you want to lay out or style and structure your application. So I'm just gonna do okay, justify content. I'm gonna center it since actually we're using a column, so this probably should pretty much work. And make sure to include the style file in here so we can recognize this really easily. So we can just go ahead and do style.css. Now it tells us that it couldn't open up anything in here, so we need to just jump back into the app.jsx, and actually you couldn't find that or something. So yeah, it's pretty bad. From there we go, just by referencing the index. When you actually go ahead and exit the actual running watch or the server development, just, you know, Control C, and you can remove this index and you can just go ahead and rerun that, because it has also another bug I found out about that. It actually doesn't recognize the index whenever you try to rename the files once it's actually running or something like this. So just, you know, get your head over it, try to fix it or something like this. Now it works without any problems, hopefully. We can jump back into the React application. Yeah, it shows actually nothing for the top container or something. It does shows nothing because we haven't set any background yet. So let's just go ahead and try to grab this background, this really nice dark blue background, and try to put it right over there. So I'm gonna go to the style.top. I'm gonna say background color. Okay, I'm gonna just paste the color, and hopefully now it shows, but the height is actually not taking the full space. I'm just gonna say height to 100%, as well as the width. So there we go. So just Control S. There we go. We've got now the weather up actually 22 pixels, quite a lot. So I'm just gonna move it to 20, and it's actually centering it. I don't want the justify contents. Yeah, since we are using the column, so we need to use the align items. Okay, now we should pretty much work. There we go. We've got the weather up, perfectly centered up there, and with everything pretty much working fine without any problems or issues or something. And everything is actually working as expected. Now we can have another component that is going to be placed right down here, which is going to play the role of displaying all the data that is about this. So all of this data is actually going to be grabbed from the API hook. So whenever we call the API I'm going to use is I don't know, API XU or something like this .com. It's pretty good. It gives you really nice, you know, free trial that about 10,000 hits a month or something like this. So we can use this and test it and create our application. Probably not going to reach out 10,000 a month. You can have another APIs, services that provide APIs like this for free. You might find another better one. You know, you can just go ahead and just update the application like this, and that would be really nice for you. So as I've said, there's going to be all of it just a containing component, so we can create another component separately for it, and it's going to be well, another stateful components for this one. So I'm just going to do class. Inside of this, we can actually have it inside of this, or we can create it separately, different file. The best way is actually to create a separate file, because you know, you can take it as each file takes one single component, unless a file has a stateful component and a stateless component. When it comes to stateless components, it doesn't actually count as a real component. You got the point pretty much. So here we can create, I don't know, so we can call this like weather.jsx or something. Okay, that seems quite interesting. Okay, we can name this reacts from reacts, and I can export defaults. I can put a class, name it weather. Okay, then extend react.component. It's gonna have a constructor and everything. And why I'm adding a stateful component instead of a stateless component is because we're gonna have a state. It's gonna be managed by this. Since we need an API call, we need to hit the server and get the data and fetch it from the actual API, the RESTful API. So we need to change the state like over time. We need to set the state, whether we set it to null since we haven't received, or if there's any errors or something. And we set the actual state, update the actual current Celsius, current the weather, we update the image and stuff like this. So we're gonna see more about this when it comes to real world things, when it comes to working with the or dealing pretty much with the RESTful APIs. And here I'm gonna have the render. So just gonna be basically rendering a very basic scaffolding thing. Here what we have is actually a container. So I'm gonna return a div dot weather container. Okay, and for this weather container we're gonna have is actually the first is the location name, then there's two containers, one is holding the image, the other one is actually holding the current I don't know, the current weather, and just we have another container down here which is going to be sunny, or shows the current weather details, so sunny or cloudy or whatever things actually happening. So what we have in here is going to be the weather container. It's going to be flex designed or flex box. Let me think about this a second so we can have the best. I'm going to create a div. So basically we can have another container inside of this. I'm just going to name this inner container so we can style them the best way. And this container, and we're going to have like above this header and a footer. So we can actually style it as this way, and inside of this we can have two containers like image, or yeah, we can just call this image, and another one we can call this actually current weather. Okay, and there you go. We can just put like 10 and image here. Location name, so we can actually test with them and we can see what's going on, and we can put, for example, sunny, and there we go. Now actually the next step is to take this component and actually call in the top in here, so we can actually right before, or right pretty much right after the weather up title, we need to render this component and get everything in. As I've said, I just want to put all the static information in here. That's why I added all the static text in here, but later on we can use the weather API to get all of the dynamic data on our components. So just simply import that in here. So let me just go ahead and do that really quick. I'm gonna say this is gonna be the weather components, and we're gonna import it from the file components that we've just created. Simple as that. And now we just need to like render it right down here. So I'm gonna say weather, and there we go. Okay. So Control S, save that, going back into the React application is just gonna use the hot reload, auto reload for you guys in here. And there we go, you've got location name, image here, and 10 degrees in here, and then it basically says it's sunny or something like this. So it's not quite as we expected it to be, but it does actually a great job. So we're trying now to add some stylings. The way I actually love to add stylings to my either like React applications or any other CSS style, whether you're creating a normal static website, HTML, CSS website, or you're dealing with a React application or any other framework you're using, it doesn't actually matter, because at the end you are going to deal with the CSS. So you need like a live preview of your CSS. You can actually just go back in here, type in the CSS, save, and let the whole reload, or you can go back and refresh that. It's going to take quite some time for you actually guys to develop the application, to see the actual size. And since actually designers or who designs web page and web developers actually takes a lot of time to put a web page together, they need to do a lot of modification, a lot of resizing things, a lot of putting things in here, color changing, font families and font sizes, and all of different things that makes you feel really uncomfortable when trying to do this. So the best way is actually throughout the dev tools, use the dev tools, the power of dev tools, and put some CSS styles from here, so it can really help you out throughout your journey as a web developer and putting CSS styles together. So now I'm gonna probably just go into the weather app, or the weather container in here. As you can clearly see, it's completely empty. It doesn't have any style. I'm just gonna start with the display. I'm gonna put a flex display. I'm gonna change the flex direction to column, so I want them just in a column way here. But it's basically a little bit more complicated than that. Since we have in here, this is the header, and we have like two components, then we have the footer. So this is actually we're gonna have like three or one more container. So this represents the header, the other one represents an inner container, and the last one in here, the sunny thing, represents the footer. So we've got to go ahead and work around with this, because this way it's not gonna work. So we need to work around the structure and change it a little bit. Since we have added in here, so you can clearly see the inner container, the footer, and the header. We already did the structure and everything, so we need to structure it using the CSS style and put it actually together in order to actually, make a difference. So since now we just put it like a display flex in here, since a flex container and everything. Now we need to go into the header, and I'm gonna say this also gonna be a display flex, but the flex direction is gonna be row, so it's always gonna take the row thing in here. Yeah, that's basically that it is. I'm gonna go to the inner container, and we add another display flex. Just gonna say flex, but this time the flex direction is gonna be row as well, because we want them to be displayed as row. Like the image is gonna be alongside the degrees or the Celsius of the weather. So basically, there's the image on the right, image on the left side, and we've got the degrees in here on the right side. Basically, this is basically what we want. And finally, we've got the footer, so it's just simply as we did in the other side. So I'm just gonna display flex, and I can just like put flex or justify content to center this out, because I need it in center, as well as the location name. I need this in center, so we can just go back to the header and do justify content to center. It's already being centered because the width in here is taking the full of it, but you can see actually the difference once the size is actually, or the text is getting smaller. So yeah, it doesn't actually matter for this time. Now we can just jump back in here. We can go to the style of the weather, and that, if I added a style anyway, so if I have a top style, I can add or create another style file, but that doesn't really matter because it's not really that big of an application, that much of large or something. So I can simply just go ahead and try to put a header in here, or try to create another container. Since it's inside the weather container in here, so I'm just gonna add a class. I'm gonna say weather container simply, and I'm gonna add dot okay, can't quite type, still can't quite type. I'm gonna add the header, add this kind of things into it. I'm gonna add the inner container, and I'm gonna add the footer finally. So I need to just jump back, copy all things. It's just basically a bunch of display flex and stuff like this. It's not really that much of a big deal. And I've got here the same thing for the footer basically. So just go ahead and copy that. Just like centers the text, and you can put that there. Now I should save that, and it should pretty much take effects immediately without any problems. As you clearly see, it works. without any problems. The one thing it just needs to add in here is just like justify content to center. Save that, and it should actually take the center perfectly without any problems. So yeah, hopefully now it works. So anyway, let's just jump into now trying to add a little bit of better style to it, because it looks really ugly. So in the header or the whole container, I'm just going to change the color of the font to white, because we are having a dark background. So it's better to change it to a light color. This is actually the best way, or the best practice you can take it as a web designer. And well, this is for the color. Here we've got the location name, and what I want is just to get some little bit of margin from the top, from the actual title. I don't want just all of them that are stuck together in here on the top. So instead of that, I'm just gonna say margin dash top. I'm just gonna say I don't know, about 3 AM or something. That's quite a lot. Let's add 1. Okay, that seems decent. Or 1.2. Okay, that sounds good. I can just copy that as well. I always love to copy my things, because saving changes is really important, because you just refresh the page, or you do some ugly mistake or stupid thing, and all of your CSS styles in here are gone. So make sure to just go ahead and save them before you do a stupid mistake or something like this. We've got the location name. Now the location name, the image, and all the degrees, we've got now to go ahead and just grab the image and just display it over there. And I need to just take the font size a little bit down, because this is looking ugly. I don't want it to look ugly like this. So just font size, let me just put it, for example, 18 pixels. That's quite a large. I'm gonna put location name simple like this, 13 pixels. And I'm gonna put for the inner container, I'm gonna put well, let's just leave it like this for the inner container. I'm gonna put the down or the footer just or font dash size, and I'm gonna put it, I think 13 pixels will do the job perfectly. And there we go. So we can just put that in here. So okay, styling can quite take some time, so yeah, it's probably gonna take the whole video. That's why you see me actually doing a lot of it. And since I haven't created this like project anyway, it's the first time creating it with you, like a live thing from scratch. So I have no idea actually how it looks like or something like this. And you actually can have some, I don't know, examples of how a developer actually works, and how you can you know, take some tips, techniques, and how you can absorb things and, you know, use them for your side and help you guys into the other side. I completely think forget about taking something in here, which is the margin top. I think, yeah, I just, okay, let me just take this really quick. I can't call it top, so I'm gonna see 1.2. Yeah, I'm gonna put the color to white. I'm gonna use hex in here because it's way much better. I can get rid of that anyway in here. It doesn't really matter. So we can refresh, but still there's nothing actually taking effect or something. Yeah, I'm missing an N in here, so it's not quite as I expected it to be. Weather container. We can save that, and there we go. So location name, sunny, but it's taking the margin from here, while I shouldn't have put it there. Okay. Good, pretty nice actually. So I can put some margin as well, like margin top and margin bottom. I can put about, I don't know, 8 pixels or something, or let's say 10 pixels is quite good. And we can put 0 pixels from the left and the right. And yeah, it looks pretty decent. Now let's just try to go ahead and grab this image. I've already set up this image in my desktop. I have just a messy desktop in here, a lot of things are going on. But I can just copy these things. I copy both of these images, which is going to be used for the bottom, and it's just like to show the sun. Just for now, just for the static thing, because later on when I add the API, it's going to completely change the look and feel of it. So yeah, it's basically just for now. Okay, let's try now to take a look. For this kind of things, hopefully it should work pretty much the same. So I need to go, let me see, SRC, as you can clearly see, they put in the logo inside of here, so we can clearly go to the SRC, reveal an explorer, and try to put something in there. I'm just going to put a new folder, named it resources. Inside of resources, I'm going to put like images or something. You can name whatever folder you like, but I'm just gonna use this quite good name. I've got sun.png and sunnyweather.jpg. This is what I need, so just refreshing that to make Visual Studio Code aware about the new folder has been created in the directory, the working directory, and now we can just go ahead and import it. And since we need to import inside the weather components, so I'm going to do that really quick in there. And actually Create React app does all the handling behind the scenes of images and stuff, so you don't really have to care about how Webpack does the bundling thing or how you actually can import an image using Webpack. Create React app has the configuration already, so you don't really have to think about it. Just go ahead and implement it. Okay, now we can grab that really quick. I'm just going to import it as a normal component, so you can deal with images as a normal component. I'm just going to go back, since we are inside inside the top, so we can grab sun image from going back once. Okay, so going back, we go to resources, images, and we grab the sun.png. Now we can create an image container here. Where is it? It's image here. I'm gonna create an image within src holding up this, so it's gonna be okay, sun image. I can just go ahead and get rid of this. I can put that, and zero is actually gonna go, so I'm gonna go in here, and there we go. We've got the sun, but it's not quite centered and everything, but I need to just go ahead and try to add a little bit of style. I'm gonna put it with 100%, hide 100% to takes the parent container. This is basically what I want to do. So it takes the parent container width, and now I can put the width, the custom width, to this one. So for example, I'm gonna put I don't know, 1 AM in here, which is not what I want. Okay, height 3 or something. That's quite a lot. Okay, seems quite good right now. It's not really that much of ugly or everything, but it looks pretty good anyway. So yeah, I don't know, but okay, let's try to copy that right now. Go into the style inside of the inner container. Since all of them are inside of the inner container, you can put image, can put some width inside of it, and inside of that we have an image tag or image element, so we can reference that to. And that's why I love actually using Sass or less, just like a CSS preprocessor, because it helps you a lot to nest attribute or nest tags inside of other tags, nest classes inside of IDs and containers, or children inside of its containers, and so on and so forth. So it really helps out during the development of things like this applications. So we can go for image, and it can put the width 100%, and okay, you can put height as well. So okay, 100%. There we go. So we should do the job perfectly, but it's not perfectly centered as we thought it would. Now we need to fix it in some styling way. So we have the image and we have the actual weather. They shouldn't actually take the full height or something. I'm just gonna tell it to fit the contents, and there we go. And I'm just gonna use the display flex. So where is that? I'm gonna use flex display to justify it now vertically instead of horizontally. I'm just gonna say align items and center. There we go. Now it does the work perfectly. I just need to take the font size a little bit up for this one, but everything is actually working pretty much fine without any problems. This class is actually named current weather, and it's not much for this. It's meant for this one, and this one is actually height to fit the contents, basically. Yeah. And I'm going to take the font size a little bit so it could be a little bit more obvious. 20 pixels, is that a good job? Or it's not? So I can 23, or even more than that, 25. Okay, because this is the main thing you want to show up, and yeah, it's really important to show it up in a really big font size because it really matters. And then just go ahead and try to just copy this one. Yeah, just gonna take it and instead of the weather in here, just gonna put it right there, just copy pasting it. So now it could look a little bit much better like a real world Celsius thing. And if you could take a look, it looks pretty much identical to this one. Not a big difference. You just need to automate this, and it takes the height a little bit of that and take this actually down a little bit. So just going to try to fix this sim styles. I've got, where's that? So let me just use the selection, the inspect in here. It's actually the header, or it's basically not. Okay, where's that? Let me just grab this really quick. It is inside of the title, and it can take it down like this, and it can add some margin to the top of 5 pixels. That quite good. Okay, pretty good. Nice. Can take this. Can go to the style basically. I think. Yep. Let me just. Now it looks pretty good. There we go. Now what we need is actually we have done this kind of things in here. We've put the sun, we've put that. We just need the button in here, which is the select location button that shows us some custom location that we can select and manipulate. And actually we can select this location later on. So we can actually probably just show up some kind of a pop-up. Whenever we click this button, we show a pop-up. We tell the user to enter the name inside of like an input, tell the user to enter the name of the location he wants to get the information of the weather from. Then afterwards, we're going to use the API that I showed you, and we can actually send a request. We grab the data about this particular city or a particular zip code, and we get this data, and actually we display it to him, like the weather, and we show him whether it's actually sunny or whatever other image in here. We can automate this kind of things, because this API that I told you about, the API axios thing that allows you to actually get the weather, it also provides you with images of real time weather. So whether you're actually getting sun, it shows you an image of sun, or it gives you in the callback, in the response, an image of sun, or actually it gives you an image of nights, like a dark moon or something like this. So it's pretty identical and pretty good for us actually as developers. So you don't really have to do a lot of things. It just like automates a lot of things behind the scenes for you, so you can care less about images and automation like this. And yeah, so we've got to go ahead and add a button here, and it's actually inside of the top. So I'm just gonna do let's name this a button. I'm gonna take class name of btn btn. Okay, select location. Okay, we have you can just have some kind of a style or class in here, like a common class, which is gonna name it btn. Well, that would be better if we put it inside of the app.css, so it'd be available for everything. Just gonna name this .btn in here, and yeah, and I can put inside of here, I can put some customization for this particular class, like the btn select location class, which can be actually used for any other thing, but it's particularly made for the location. So we can just go ahead and put it inside of I don't know, so we can put it just like the top container, and it should be there, or just like leave it alone in here. Okay, pretty good, no problems actually. Inside of this button, what we're gonna do, let me just try to put a button first, then we can care about how we can style it or something. Okay, there we go. Just put the name or the title of the button, and yeah, it doesn't actually look as we want it to be, but it will. So with this really nice color, we try to make it with some borders and border radius and stuff. So it's gonna first, I'm gonna put it I'm gonna change the border to solid, and put some kind of AAA color around there, or just try to put 222. Okay, that's not good. DDD. Okay, seems good. We can go now to let me just put some margin around it, like the margin from the top and the left, so you can put 15 pixels. It looks pretty decent now, and a 0 from the left to the right. And can jump in here, we grab the color, and we just select this really quick, not the text but this one, copy the hexadecimal value of the background, and it can pull the background color really easily. There we go, kind of identical. We can change the font size to 16 pixels. That is quite large. You know, seems decent to me. Or we can take it down a little bit, much further. I don't know what font size it's actually using, but it's actually let me select the text. It's using Roboto. I don't think if it's that available for us, but let's try. So font family. I think so. That is actually available. If it's not, I'm just gonna fall back to the sans serif, so we can easily use that. And I can add some border radius. So quite a lot. Now it actually seems good. Okay, 2 pixels is pretty decent. And okay, that's actually pretty good. And it can change the color a little bit to make it a dark gray, so we can put AA8 around there, or a much better thing, 555. There we go. Wow, that was like quite want it to be, but okay, that's pretty decent. I try to copy into this one. I'm gonna just take the, since the bottom, I'm gonna take the margin and this, and we can just left the all of the other ones to customizable things. So we can copy that, I can put inside of the bottom here, and they can both have merged together without any problems. And yeah, that is actually working pretty much fine. I can just go ahead and remove the outline from the bottom here. And I'm gonna say this and out, or yeah, I'm gonna change the focus. Okay, that should work. If we try to press that or something, or try to focus the button in general, you're not actually gonna get any outline or something like this. That's pretty decent, so it works as we expect it to be. Now we actually need to work a little bit on the bottom side in here. So going to bottom and the index.js for the bottom in here, and we have just do a couple of things actually for it. Let's first just try to add the class name. So I'm gonna do bottom dash container. It's just gonna be the container, and inside of this container, if you can clearly look, where is that? So if you can clearly look in here, I'm gonna just use this image in here from this prototype. So I'm just gonna put this image in the background. I've already got this image in my source code. Just put it there, and you probably not. So we can just go ahead and later on add a forecast for the couple of next days. We can just do a very simple forecast, because working on it is gonna take much more time. It's not that much of complicated, since you know the principles and actually the basics of getting RESTful APIs done in here in just one single component, which we're gonna work on in a couple of minutes, of course. And getting everything done in here, it's gonna be just very simple, just playing around with React and rendering single one a couple of times, actually using a loop, and rendering a component a couple of times, actually just showing the forecast for every single day, and you're done. So this is pretty much it, not that much of complicated or anything else. So as I've said, let's just go and jump into my source code in here. I've already put the image inside of, as we have seen, which is the sunny weather. So it's a lovely image. You can find much better image, of course, but let's just go and stick with this for now. I'm just gonna go to the style of the bottom, and let's try to add this. So I'm just gonna do bottom dash container. So we're gonna add a couple of styles. I'm gonna do a background, a dash color to it, and or just like the background, and we can basically put a URL for this background, which gonna be, we have the style inside of this, so we need to get out of this. And is it inside of components? So we need to get out 2 times. So we're just gonna go back once, then go back twice, and we can go inside of resources. Then we grab images, sunnyweather.jpg, and it pretty much should do the job perfectly without any problems. We might do some linear gradients above that, but there's still not really that much of thing. Let's just try to put the width. So it's gonna be 100%. Okay, that is not really what I want. The height as well is going to be 100%, and yeah, there we go. try to save that, and also make sure to go ahead and import this. I'm not importing this style sheet, so you're gonna do style.scss, which is referencing a relative path of it. Just saving this, it should do the job. Now we can go back in here. I think we're not seeing any changes anyway, so let me just see this. The bottom container, is this actually matching it, or yep, it is, but it seems a little bit off. Okay, let's check. It's the bottom. I added a class of, okay, it's a top section and the bottom section. Okay, I'm not even importing this in there, so yeah. Go into the app.js and you need to import the top section. It didn't do even that, so I'm just gonna do bottom section from components / bottom and / index. So I'm gonna grab the index from there, and most cases in here, as you can clearly see, I'm putting the index. I don't know, for some reason it's giving me an error, because in most of cases, like 90% of times, you're not required to put the index in here, because Node.js or your compilers, actually Webpack, most cases, it knows about that. It's smart enough to know that you are wanting the index, since you only referenced the actual path in here, the actual folder only, without putting a name of a file inside of it. It always gonna go ahead and look up for a file name by default, named index.something.js or .typescript or something like this. But in this case, we are required to put it for some reason. I don't know. It's just like a really bad bug, so it's very annoying, I know. Here I'm gonna put the same thing. I'm just gonna put bottom section, and there we go. So just simple as that. We can jump back in here. Hopefully we wait for it to compile. I know it's taking quite some time, and yeah, there we go. We've got a really ridiculous not centered image or something anyway, so I need to work on this image a little bit so I can put this center, or I can, well, let's try to figure out something. Okay, so only center is actually working for this, kind of, not really what I want, but yeah, it's a little bit annoying because the image is not fitting the right spot in here. So yeah, I wanted just like to resize the whole thing in here. It takes the full width and the full height of it. So I'm gonna add the property of background size. So this property basically, it lets you size the background on an image background, actually on a container, however you actually want, as a cover, as a content. Basically, we want them to cover so it can actually scale and fit the inner width and the height of the container. So this is basically what we want. And here we can put center, and it can put out, for example, no repeat, so it doesn't actually repeat or something, just to make sure that it won't repeat it anyway. And there we go. We've got everything basically working as expected, but still not looking as we want it to be in here. And the preview, it's a little bit dimmed, as you can clearly see in here. So we've got some linear color above this, and this is actually the CSS code of this linear color. I'm just gonna copy. I'm just gonna show you what does this linear color does. So here, the linear color, you can change it a little bit to look a little bit much better for us, which I am doing it now. To make it look a bit better, and yeah, other than that, it's just looking a little bit off, so I'll try it to look good. Okay, this seems decent. I'm just gonna go and copy the code, and this is the nicest things about Figma. It lets you copy the CSS code right out of the box, so just you don't really need to go ahead and through it from the beginning and takes all the stuff and all things around. So just like the linear ingredients, you added that, you tell it which degrees, and you give it the hexadecimal color, and from where to go, like from top to left or right to left, and so on and so forth. You've got like basic directioning. And there we go. So you can add this just before we specify the URL, and we can add a comma, and there we go. It's just doing it basically as we want it to be. Now, pretty good. You can even actually find a little bit better and smoother linear gradient color in here, and much better image in here to put in the background. Just, you know, if you do that, make sure just go put in pull request or something that just let me see a preview of your application, your version of your application, so we can, I don't know, see what you can actually do it and how productive you are. So let's try now to basically copy this and go back in here, go to the CSS style, And where's the CSS? Let me just copy it just nearby this so we can work flawlessly. And I'm just going to paste this one. Very simple. Save it, and it should pretty much work fine. You can clearly see in here, nothing has been changed or something. Let me just get rid of that text. It's really annoying. I don't want any text or something. I'm just going to keep it smooth and nice and empty for now. So everything would look basically the ones, or however you actually want it to be. So it's looking pretty basic without any problems and stuff. And now it's time actually for working with the actual API. Now what we need is to get the real dynamic data here. All of these like sunny text and the location name and this image in here, all of them actually are static. And since we're creating a real world weather application, we don't really want to deal with any static things in here. We want everything to be dynamic, so we can just go ahead and put a request there and fetch some data from a specific API, and we get the JSON data from that for the forecast, for like the current weather, for today's weather basically, and for the forecast, for example, for the next 10 days or something like this. You can specify how many days you can get, and there's a limit for that, of course. But the API we're going to use is actually called API axios. It's a really awesome weather API, and the reason I choose this over the others because it gives you like a 10,000 hits per month for free. And since we just want them for testing purposes, it's not really for commercial things or something like this. So it's definitely worth it, and you can just go ahead and try it. It's super simple. It gives you a really meaningful data that you can use. So just go ahead and register that. This is like the website. So just go apiaxio.com. You can just go ahead and create your accounts. Basically, you need the key for it. So let me just go ahead and just give you a quick overview of this API. So this is like an interactive API explorer that lets you test the API and see what does the API actually have and what data does it return for you, what does it provide, and does it you pretty much need it or not. It gives you two options, XML, JSON. Of course, we're going to use JSON because XML is just like hell, and since we're using JavaScript, JSON is like the feature for JavaScript. Basically, you want nowadays to use JSON for everything. So, and also we want to use HTTPS over HTTP for a secure layer. And here you just put the value for the query, which is basically the city name that you want to get the forecast for. It's like you need to use the city name. You can't use a country or something because a city name is what basically describes a weather forecast. And here you can choose a current weather, a forecast weather, like search autocomplete and history weather. That's like, already, or the history of the weather for the past days, past years, or something like this. That's not really much interesting. We want a real-time weather application so we can get the forecast weather or the current weather. Let's just go and try to work with the forecast weather, because later on we might add, as I've told you, the forecast for the couple of next days. So we can just go in and put the forecast for the weather of the next days, basically. So we want to use the forecast weather instead of the current weather. Here we put the query, so which city. I'm going to just put London. Just use it as an example. You can put how many days you want to get. There's like up to 10 days of a forecast. I'm just basically going to put, for example, 5. It's quite decent, and you can just go and show the response. Make sure to put your API key in here in order to be able to test that, and it gives you this really awesome JSON structured data in here. Really easy with a really important and crucial information that we need through our application. It gives you the name of the city, it gives you the region specifically, it gives you, for example, the latitude, the longitude, which you might not need it for this application, but you definitely need it for other things. Like gives you an ID, so where it exactly is, like inside of Europe and London. So a local time, and a local time is like what is the current time of getting this weather data. So you can do plenty of things for this. There's also a current objects in here, so like the last updated as well. Epoch in here, just like the milliseconds, or it's a timestamp. A temporary in Celsius or temporary in Farad. So I'm gonna basically use Celsius in this case, like 4 degrees. Is day, so it's like a boolean, tells you if this city is currently at day or at night. It's basically when it tells you 0, so you can take it as a boolean, either 0 or 1, so it's basically at night. The condition of this is clear, and it gives you the icon, and the icon I'm talking about is basically the icon that we have used in here. So it's like the sun icon. Either it gives you a sun icon, or it gives you something like a night icon, like a moon, half moon icon. You can clearly see in here, it's the half moon icon. You can clearly go ahead and use this because, as I told you, we're going to make everything image, the text, and the location name, and the sunny text in here. Everything is going to be dynamic, so we're going to use this weather API. Really, really awesome. And a couple of more other things. And also we've got an important thing like the forecast, and it gives you an array of forecast days starting off from the first day. So we're starting from 0. This is the first day temperature and the condition and everything, all the information. And you've got basically all the data that you need for the days that you've specified, like the next up days or 5 days. And there we go. So you simply just go ahead and try and need to install Axios. So just do npm install Axios. It makes you to save it as a dependency. So what basically Axios is just like a library that allows you to send and receive HTTP requests and receive pretty much responses very easily with an awesome APIs, and it uses promises. This is the best part. Since it uses promises, it gets you out of the old way, and the promise is a great way to deal with async code and all of the callback hell things. So promises are the thing that you should actually take care more about, especially now. Like nowadays, you should use promises. No callbacks are required. And for HTTP requests, Axios is doing a pretty great job with a lot of features and stuff. So you should probably just go ahead and do it. I already did install that. Make sure to install it. It's really minimal. It's not really that much of a big deal. You can just go ahead and jump that. And now we need to get the actual API key in here. So you can just go ahead and grab this API key, copy it, and we can go ahead and use it. But for now, let's just go and see how we can work with our application. So remember that we've got the top section and the bottom section, and both of them are wanting to access the weather API data. So how we can do this? For example, some of you might ask or might see like a proposition. They say like you can go ahead inside of the top components in here, like the top section, and do a request. Like you send an HTTP request and you receive the data, then you actually go ahead and render this particular data inside of the render method. Pretty basic, huh? So this is not the case actually. What about the bottom section in here? So the weather section and the bottom section are completely separate siblings. They have nothing to do with each other, and they don't actually know each other, so they can't exchange the data unless we use some kind of a flux or something that we're using. But it's not the practical thing to do, because you're gonna hit or request the server twice, and since you've got a plan that you're not needing to request this particular server because you've got a limit like 10,000 hits per month or something, and you're actually doing it wrong because you're going to request it on the top component or the top section, then you're going to move on to the bottom section and do another request, which is absolutely nonsense. You shouldn't actually do this. So you only need to go ahead and hit the server only once your application is actually starting, because your application is basically about weather data. So you need to do it on the start of the application, then passing this data as props to both of the components. And remember that we've got the app.js in here, which is the main render of both of these sections. Like it renders the top section and it renders the bottom section. So we should actually fetch the data inside of the app.js. Then we take this data that we have got, pass it down through to the top section and the bottom section, they can actually use it throughout the props. Pretty basic. Now, for fetching any data, for using RESTful APIs with React, the best way to go through, or the best way to set up your request and receive the response and handle all the data you get, is inside of the components did mount method. So it's actually the best method that you should choose for sending requests. There's other methods actually, but this is the one, because once your component is actually just mounted, you've got access to all of the inner data and inner references of your pretty much components, and you're not going to get any errors or something like when you put this inside of component did update or something like state conflicts or something like this. Everything's going to work for you, and this is the best phase to put the data. Now we've got to access some kind of a const, so I'm just going to set up, clearly seeing here, I did set up a constructor, I think, behind the scenes. So it's simple, just go ahead and set up a constructor as a normal constructor. I didn't show that, I think, in the video, but yeah, just set up a constructor in here, put the states pretty basically in here. What we're going to do is just going to put a couple of things. I'm just going to say, well, let me create a const variable that's going to be an accessor from here. I'm going to say weather key equals, and I'm going to take my key and put it in here. So okay, I've got no key. Let me just copy that and make sure to get your key So you can put it in here as a const because it's not going to change anyway. So we can go ahead and use that. And I'm going to just set up a couple of things since we need this city name. So we're going to add a city name, and also we need like the days of the forecast that we're going to need to check for. I'm going to add this to the state. I'm going to say city name going to be something London, okay, and I'm going to add forecast days. It's going to be 5 days, okay. That's pretty good. You can use up to 10 days in here. I'm going to just go in and use the destructure of the state so we can fetch the data out of the state very easily without any headache. I'm going to say city name and the forecast days and this dot states. Okay, now we need some, actually this is the weather API and everything. Now we need to use axios to hit this data. So obviously just go ahead and like import that very easy. Just do import axios from axios. And there we go. You've got Axios available for you, and you can go ahead and use it. And as I told you before, Axios uses a promise-based API, so it's very easy for you to go through it. I'm going to do a GET request. Since this accepts a GET request to this particular API or this particular URL, I'm going to just go with here. And before doing any requests, we need to set up the URL first. I'm going to just copy the URL. I'm going to put it between string literals because it's going to allow us to interpolate some variables inside of this, and this is really important. We need to interpolate some variables like the API key since we've got it up there. So I'm going to just go ahead and do the weather key, and also for the query I'm going to interpolate the city name and also the forecast days that we've got. And there we go. So yeah, pretty basic. Now we've got the URL basically set up and everything. We can just go ahead and take and put the URL, and as I've told you, it's promises, so we can use then and catch, and it takes a callback. So it takes a response, and we can do anything with the then their response, and we can actually go ahead and do a catch. So we can catch the error, and we can actually check if the error has anything to do with that. If it does, I'm just going to do console.error. Cannot fetch weather data from API, and I can put the error in there. So for just bare debugging, and we can see clearly what is going on behind the scenes. So we can just go ahead and console log the error as well, the error objects. And if they got the error response, I'm going to do here just console log. I'm going to put data. I'm going to put response so we can clearly see what is the data that we are getting back. Now we're saving this, we go back, hopefully in here just going to go in and refresh, and once the component is being mounted, we're going to go ahead and get the data back. There we go. We've got the data successfully, no errors, nothing at all. And the data objects that Axios actually returns for us has a couple of things. It has the configuration, the global configuration for Axios that you can actually set up and configure. We've got the data, which is basically the object that we receive from the hitted URL that we just, the API that we have just hit. And we've got a couple of headers that has been sent back from the server that we have just, or from the API. And basically the request that we have just sent, which has a couple of data actually, but and headers and stuff, and a status tag like okay or error or something, depends on what actually state you are on with this one. But basically what we need is the object called data, which has all of the data. So here you see in here we've got the JSON data, which is current, and you can actually deal all of different things in here. That you can actually access the different data and the forecast and the location and stuff. So we can just go ahead and use this. And what I like in here using is pipe then inside of then. So this returns an object. So we can just go ahead and distract this object and move on to another end, which means just going to go ahead and do like a response, return data. And inside of this data, I'm going to need a couple of things. I'm just going to return the data, and the data is going to have the current forecast and location objects. I'm just going to return this. I'm going to pipe another then, and this is going to have the actual data. So this is the best thing, or the best part about promises. So you can actually pipe a then inside of another then, and so on and so forth. There, it can help you a lot throughout your journey as a web developer and dealing with asynchronous code in general. So the then in here, we've got all the couple of data and stuff like this, we can just go ahead and update the state with a couple of things. So since we need the weather data, if you take a look on the top, what we've got just a simple title, the location, but this one actually needs a data. So it needs something to be rendered, like the degrees and stuff. So let me just go ahead and set up a props for this. The props that we're gonna need is actually the data. So I'm gonna access this. Let me use a destructor in here. I'm gonna do a const. I'm gonna get the data out of it because later on I'm gonna pass the data throughout to the weather.jsx as a props, and then we can go ahead and get this data and render it right over here. So just gonna say, let me see for the API where it's actually naming it. So it's naming it temporary.c, temporary C, and we can get isDay pretty much. It's like a boolean variable, shows if it is day or not, and I don't know, we can get basically like the condition, or let's just go and get text out of it. So the text that we need to display right over here instead of the sunny, and we can get an icon. So I'm just gonna say icon URL, and there we go. I'm gonna extract this from this.props. And you can use prop types and React prop types and stuff like this, but it's not really that much of a big deal in our case. So I'm just gonna return the temp Celsius in there. I'm gonna replace that with the text that we need to show and the icon and stuff. I'm gonna talk more about this in a couple of seconds. But yeah, so this is basically working pretty much fine. And yeah, this is basically what we need. Let's just jump back in here for the top, and it's gonna require something because it's gonna throw us an error telling us we've got no props or something. So, and also I need a location name, so we totally forgot. I'm gonna say location, and I'm gonna put location right over there. So instead of the weather in here, we've got a couple of things. We've got location. We've got as well a temporary C. Okay, there's no comma. I don't know. isDay. We also got the text and the text or the icon URL. So both of these needs to be passed as well from the top in here. So also we need to get them from the props in here so we can go ahead and just pass them through this one. And what you can probably do, I don't know why you did this way, but you can just go ahead and put the props, like use the spread syntax, the ESX spread syntax to spread the props all over here, just pass it through without carrying and putting every single prop name in here because they're gonna have the same prop names. So let me just gonna copy all of that because it's just like, or pretty much cut it. Go to the up.jsx, and we need this on the top section, and I'm gonna get this from the state because we're gonna save this on the state. I'm gonna do const. I'm gonna get the city name. I'm gonna get temporary C. I'm gonna get isDay. I'm gonna get the text and icon URL. So all of those are going to be saved inside of the state so we can go ahead and access them. And here we need to just go ahead and do this operation. So we can do this set state, and we can pass in the data that we want. The city name is not going to be changing or anything because it's static for now. We can deal about this later on. I'm just going to put the temporary C. It's going to be data dots. Let me see this. So it's going to return the current. So we need to access the current. Then we can actually temporary C. So I'm gonna do current.temp C. Also, we're gonna need isDay, which pretty much inside of the same thing in here. Just we need to access the current inside of the data current.is, but there's actually a dash. We're using camel casing in here while they're using like dash casing in here or something. So yeah. This is for the isDay. We can pass in the waterwork icon and all those things like the text. So data dot current dots. We've got condition, and inside of condition we've got text. And finally, we can put the icon URL, which is going to be data.current condition. Okay, and icon, simply icon. Okay, there we go. So I don't know, I'm not getting any prettifying code, but it's not really that much of good. I've got a couple of errors, that's why it's not working. I need to pass in a couple of things in here. I'm gonna pass the city name, temporary is the east day, and text, and finally the icon URL. So we can easily just pipe them through using the props. So we can go ahead and use them from the next side. And here we just set the state without any problems. Just simple as that, because setting the state is a really important step to do. And I'm gonna put some kind of a variable in here. So for example, I'm gonna put a loading. It's gonna be boolean. At first, it's gonna be true because the application is gonna start. It's gonna be loading inside of the loading state. And I'm gonna check in here. So if there is actually any loading, I'm gonna have like a top section and a bottom section. What I can do, so let me see this. I'm only gonna just go ahead and do this inside of the top section. I'm gonna check. Let me grab this EL. What did I name this? Okay, loading. Let me just add is, because always when naming your Boolean variables, make sure them look and feel as a Boolean variable, like adding a the is or is it or something like makes it like a Boolean variable. So like when you ask a question, is loading, so the answer is pretty much gonna be, for example, true or false, nothing more and nothing less. So this is what I mean by making it much more Booleaner thing in here. So I'm gonna put is loading and end, so we can actually render that. I'm not referencing this anyway. We can grab it up there, and if it is loading, that's pretty great. If it's not, I'm gonna add another one. Well, it's actually vice versa. If it's not loading, we can just go ahead and do that. If it is loading, I can remove the not. If it is not loading, what I can do is render something like weather. Okay, set some text. I'm gonna put in H3. It's not gonna work. Let me just loading weather. You can make it just a little bit much better about ideal loaders or any other cool style that make it flimsy and smooth and nice, but that will do the job for now. Just we want to test the functionality, so you always want to start by testing a functionality and seeing if your application logic, inner logic actually works or not. So we've got is loading, true, and here once we finish loading, like we fetch the data, we need to make this false because it's a really important step. Is loading, we need to make it to be false so we can actually end the loop of our application that we tell it is loading or not. We can save here. We can go back in here. What I can do, as I've told you, the spread props capabilities. I'm just gonna put a dot this dot props, and we can pass this inside of an object in here, and ESX is gonna do the job for us with the lovely Babel and stuff like this. It's gonna help us do that. So we can just go and spread the syntax because they have the same names that we have passed in, so we don't really have to do that much of things. And we're gonna give the data. Finally, in here, we can just go ahead and render it. So we can easily go ahead and check if our application works. Loading weather, and I think it never goes off, so it just like keeps loading or something. I don't know, something ridiculous. It's actually really loading, but there we go. Oh my god, it's actually working, and we've got London, 4 degrees, even though there's no degrees sign in here. And there's like the sun thing. We've got clear location, and the text is working pretty much fine, but the icon is not as we want it to be, so we can go ahead and change it. And also we can add the degrees thing. So I'm just going to copy this really quick from here. I mean this section of the text. We can go to the weather, and here we can just add this at the end, so it looks much more that we are using Celsius, and it's actually a weather degrees. Okay, and here for the src, instead of putting the sun image, we can put the icon image, and it should basically work fine. But I don't know, let's try this, if the weather image is gonna work fine or not. And there we go, we've got it that, but it's a little bit not as we expected it to be. So we can jump into the style of this, and you can see this 3. Let me just take this to 4 to make it look much better. And there we go, it looks much better, much clearer. And we've got that little half moon thing that's there, and it's telling us 4 degrees. If you can take a look on Google and tell him London weather, and yeah, he's actually failing us. We got here 4 degrees. I don't know, Google is telling us 2 degrees, but it's basically the same thing, I think. I don't know, but yeah, our API is actually working. We trust in this API working. Don't expect you to get it 100% of time fine, but that should do the job perfectly without any problems, I think. So there we go. We've got your first API set up for a weather application. That's pretty great. We've got that thing first. Now we can take this into the next level, and we can create like the forecasting and show up the days in here, which I'm gonna create in a couple of seconds. Actually, I'm just gonna do this really quick, and you can also go through this and select a location. So whenever you select a location, you can go ahead and reload the whole application and reselect everything from scratch, and so on and so forth. That's gonna go ahead and take quite some time, of course, but that's gonna basically be it in a very simple thing. So let's try to go ahead and do it. Now, actually, for adding the functionality to this button and be able to click and get some kind of a pop-up, like an inline pop-up, then we get an input, then we'll be able to input the city name. We click enter, then the actual application is just going to go ahead and change it to that particular city that we have just chosen. So I'm going to use some kind of library or third-party components already created for us, which is called React Popper, that allows you to easily create pop-ups without headaches or something, because creating a pop-ups is quite a hard thing to do. It takes quite some time, and it's not really that thing for doing it just from scratch in this video. So we can just go ahead and use a third-party library. It's basically the best thing to do in this case. So it does the job basically perfectly in here. You can go ahead and just install this React Popper thing. It's available on GitHub with all of the things in here, and it uses actually the render prop from React. It's like basically an awesome design pattern that you can go ahead and use. Let me just go ahead and do this. I'm gonna install React Popper and make sure to save it. So I just like full documentation in here, React Popper, and we normally install, or you can use run, whatever. Both of them are actually working pretty much fine. So it's pretty simple, pretty basic. This is gonna do, if we jump to the weather application, I think inside of the top, yeah, there we go. We've got the button, and if you can take a look in here and explaining the definition of this, or how actually it works and how this design pattern works. You've got a manager in here that manages both the pop-up and the reference, and basically the reference is actually the button that you toggle, like you click and you show up the pop-up, and you actually or you hover and you show up the pop-up. This is actually the toggle button that we want. In our case, it's going to be this. We click it and we want to show up the pop-up button, or the actual pop-up container. And we've got in here, you're basically going to pass it a function, and you're going to pass you a props from this reference. So the reference is going to pass you a props in here. You can use these props in order to be able to render this. It's a really awesome design pattern. And also you can pass in another function in here, passing you some kind of a props, like having a row props, which placement it is. You put the placement, of course, above here, and what a style and a reference that you can actually use, and you can just go ahead and put them all inside of here. And you can, this is basically the container of your popper, or you pretty much pop up, and you can just go ahead and use it. It's pretty basic, it's not that much of complicated or anything, it's straight to the points. So we can go ahead and use this right now. I'm gonna go ahead and grab it from as I've said in here. I'm just gonna copy this. I don't want to waste so much of time. So we've got the manager, the reference, and the popper, and I need to wrap both of these inside of here. I can also just go ahead and copy all of that, just like copy pasting. It's not really that much of complicated. So we've got the reference and we've got both of them. We need to go ahead and instead of putting this button, I can cut this button and put it in here because this is our toggle button that we want to use. And we've got just like a very basic pop-up in here, so we can go ahead and test it and see how it works. But instead of the right, let me just put the placement to the top so we can, better see this. We've got the React application. I don't know, I'm getting two things in here, two completely different things, like two buttons, like I'm rendering them both or something. And just might make sure to put the reference in here because this is actually how the design pattern work. Just with the reference in here, gonna allow it to reference that and get the actual exact location or the exact position of your target button in here, and this actually can help it a lot. So yeah, just doing that can pretty much help a lot. But what we need in here is not going to help us anyway. So as you can clearly see, the layout is pretty much working. We get all of that, but the proper elements shows anyway. So by default, it's visible. What we want is only to show it or only make it visible once we click the button. So we toggle this, like the show up of this pop-up element only once we click the button. So we need to do like a toggle system. So we're gonna go ahead and add an all click here. So once we click it, we're gonna just do that. And I've got above this, I'm gonna create a private function or a private method since we are actually inside of a class context. I'm gonna name this on select location. Okay, let's try to toggle. Let's try on toggle select location, and it's gonna take an event, or basically we're not gonna need that much of an event anyway. So yeah, that's basically what it is. I thought myself I'm actually in TypeScript, that's why I put it private. Sorry guys. Just like I work a lot with TypeScript, that's why I did private over there. But anyway, so putting just an on toggle select location method up there, and in here we want to get the reference of that. So by default, we're gonna have is select location open, and by default it's gonna be false. So the startup is gonna be false, and in here we're gonna do if, or we're just gonna do the set state, and we're gonna get the second version. So we get the previous state, and we can actually set a new state of this previous state. So we can do like is select location open, and we just toggle it by just putting it false to the last state. So it's select location open, and just doing the not in here will reverse everything. Since it's just a boolean, it's just gonna do the job for us perfectly. And here we're gonna go ahead and put this. So I'm gonna say this dot is select location or on toggle select location, and make sure to bind the current class context by just doing bind this. It's a really important thing to do inside of React. Either you can do it inside of the constructor, or you can inline do it in here on the event function. Both of them works. So we just like to prefer using it in an inline events function. And yeah, this should do the job perfectly. Now we need to use this variable. So up here, I need to go ahead and construct this variable from the state. I'm gonna do is select options open equals. Okay, so is dot states. There we go, and we're not gonna allow this to render. So I'm gonna do is select location open, and so we're just gonna do an int operator in here. So if it is true, it's gonna render. If it is false, it's not gonna render anyway. And this should do the job firstly for us. So we can go back. I think once we click this, as you clearly see, we get it. Once we click it again, it just like toggles everything. So it's like now it looks much better as a pop-up. We still got a couple of things actually to add, like a style in order to show the proper cursor, the hand cursor thing. So I'm gonna do this. Where's the button actually? So, or we can do this a little bit inside of the app.css because it's like generic thing for all of the buttons. I'm gonna do cursor to pointer, and yeah, it should do the job. One other thing is I want to fix the pop-up, so I need to give it a quick awesome style for this pop-up. It's a really important thing to do. So I'm gonna do this really quick. I'm gonna do the width about, I don't know, let's try 5 EM or something like this. That's Okay, that seems good. Okay, for the height, I'm gonna try 5. That seems decent. And I'm gonna do a display of flex. Okay, that sounds actually good. I'm gonna do a border radius of 4 pixels, and I'm gonna add finally background dash color. I'm just gonna make a white background color so it looks stunning, as clear as in here. Basically, I'm gonna add some box shadow, like I'm gonna add 0 pixel, 0 pixel, just like center it, and I can add 3 pixels in there for the blur and stuff. So I can 3 pixels, and I can add, for example, 8 pixels, and I can do RGB 15, 15, 15, just basically dark gray, but with just a layer of transparency in here. And I can actually take this down. So yeah, it looks much better now, way much better. So it looks like a real world pop-up. So it's better than it was, and it's basically doing the job perfectly. Yeah, I think putting the top and the bottom, I can put some kind of top like this so it gets the point perfectly, and I can put just like, since it's an absolute, so you can easily play around with the top and the left positions in here without any problems actually. So yeah, you can get them do the job for you. And yeah, so this is basically it. Let's try now to let me just change the font size. I'm gonna just make it 16 pixels or something like this. Okay, let's just go ahead with 16 pixels, no problem with this. Let me copy that and put it inside of a pop-up, since we are inside of the top, but the pop-up is actually a generic thing, so we can go ahead and put it inside of the app.ss. It's like a common thing to have. You're gonna do a pop-up dash container, and this is gonna be the pop-up container that we have got. Then we can just go back and reference the same style that we have got. So where is that? Inside of the top, and I'm gonna put okay, this is gonna take class name and pop-up dash container. Great. Jumping back in here. Okay, that seems pretty decent actually. So yeah, it's doing the job perfectly. I can take a little bit of the width and what is that? The app.css. Can take the top a little bit up, like 60 or something. That should actually do the job, or I don't know. I think it's being overwritten. That's why I'm not getting it right. But what I can do is I don't know. I'll just keep it for now like this. Or we can play around with some CSS styles in here, like inline styles, so we can actually take that. As you can clearly see, I'm putting the style in here, and which doing the job perfectly, but I can put another object inside of this, and I can put the top, or it's not here, the top position to like about minus 55 pixels, so it goes a little bit to the top, and hopefully it does that. But yeah, I think this is actually okay. This is not what I want in here. It's basically not what I want, so I need to put it inside of this style. So this is basically the main style that I should have put it inside of it. Just missing a curly brace and saving that. Where is this? Okay. And basically now it works. Okay, so I don't know. I don't like this 45. It could work now for the 45. yeah, it does a great job. Okay, now the pop-up is actually finished. Let's just try now to put inside of it some input things so we can control this pop-up. Inside of this nifty text, I can put a div, and there's gonna be a class name like form container, and we're gonna have some kind of a label, and label HTML for location dash name, or location name, and we can put an input. It's type text, and we can put an ID to this input, which is going to be location name. And yeah, so placeholder, I can play a little bit placeholder, and I can put city name. Alright, and we might want to reference another button, and it's gonna have the same style of this button. Let me just go and put it the same style of it. I don't want to do a lot of things, so. And select. Take a look on it. Select in here. It's pretty much working fine without any problems, hopefully. And we're doing it actually in inputs with some kind of a placeholder. We definitely need to add some styles to it because it's not gonna look this pretty much stunning as we want it to be, as the label and everything. So we can just go ahead and edit the style just a tiny bit so it looks as we want it to be, like for the font flash size for 8 pixels or something. Okay, that sounds good. And also we can go ahead and do some, where is the form container, and we can do some padding for the form container, like 5 pixels or even more than 5 pixels, 6 pixels, okay. And for the input as well, I'm gonna put the width, so we can take the full width out of this. Okay. The input is actually, I'm gonna add some border radius to it, like 4 pixels or something. Okay, that's quite a lot, so I'm gonna do also a border 1 pixel solid RGBA 15 15 15 0.2. That's decent actually. It's not the greatest thing, the greatest input basically, but it should do the job perfectly. So we'll try to go ahead now and style this, and I'm gonna put it inside of the app.css, and I'm gonna just create a form dash container, and it's actually inside of the input, so I'm gonna put an input, I'm gonna put it there, I'm gonna have a label, and also it's gonna have a custom style that I've just set for it. So it's just a font size, just a tiny font size. And we've got also some kind of a custom styles for the main container, which is the form container. And well, it's actually doing it. And let's try now to go into the pop-up container and take this fixed height. I should do the job perfectly for now. Or we can just take it up ourselves. Like 5 em is basically perfect, without any problems. And we can take the width, and now it looks much more stunning than it was looking. I don't know where I put it. It's where's this actually? So I think it's kind of a pop-up container. They've put it in here. Yeah, I actually did it. Completely forgot. So just pasting this, saving it, and there we go. We've got that. It's pretty decent. It's not really that much of an awesome things, but it should do the job perfectly. And since we've got an absolute position, so once you change that, it actually changes with you. But just refreshing the application, it's gonna work. So yeah, I don't know what I'm getting this, but it's ridiculous. I think the problem that I'm doing is if I go to the top, is I'm actually overriding the data, which you shouldn't have done, but I'm stupid enough to do, so yeah, you got the points. I shouldn't have done that, just leave it as it is. You can just go ahead and use some CSS styles to offset this, but I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. It works pretty much fine without any problems. So clearly see. It's pretty great. Now we need to add some functionality to it, like whenever we click that, I'm going to change the, like we click select, it changes the whole thing for this. And I actually can, when I click outside, I can't close this. It's really annoying thing, but you can work a little bit on that, so you can fix it. That's not really a big deal to be taken care of, but still a thing to do for your application. So now how we can think about whenever we click the select button, which is going to be this button, we're going to hook up something. So we're going to just like do an event or something, like emits an event, and it's actually going to take care of doing and refreshing the whole thing and changing the state and actually sending another request to the APIs for getting another city and so on and so forth. So for basically doing this, what we can do is use event imager that I've put in inside of the Flux. So remember the first time that we have set up the store.js, and I've told you that this is going to be our Flux store. So we were actually combining together components. So as a child component, it's kind of rough and hard from a child component in React ecosystem, from a child component talking with a parent components. That's in the hierarchy. This is actually really ridiculous to do, but using a Flux like a parent compared to Flux, or even Redux for higher end application and larger projects. But for now, just Flux is doing pretty much job for us. Great job for our application without any problems actually. So we can just send the data from the child back to the actual parent component without any problems. And we can use for this case something called events and event imagers. So I can actually go ahead and create something like this. So what I'm going to do inside of this store, I'm going to go ahead and grab this event. I'm going to do events imager from. So the event is actually a module created for you by default and installed for you from Node.js. So it's like a pre-built module. It's a standard module on Node.js. So once you actually use npm, you install the packages, you're going to find it by default installed for you inside of the Node module. So you don't really have to install it. Even though you don't have it, you can just go ahead and install it. But most of the times, 100%, you're going to find it over there. So you don't really need to require install anything. And yes, this is basically what you should just be taken care of. Now inside of here, inside of the state, we can save some kind of an event imager. Then we can use actually this object. So inside of the constructor, not the state actually, so just inside of the constructor, I'm going to create an instance of that. I'm going to do this dot event imager. It's not a couple case because it's just like an object instance of that. I'm going to do new of event imager, just creating a simple instance of this. And this actually, when you take a look on it, you can do event or imager dot. I'm not accessing the actual object, so event imager dots. You're gonna find a couple of methods. Like the most important for us is the emit method that allows you to actually emit an event to the whole registered callbacks and listeners, and inside of the on method you actually register your listeners for a specific event names and events keys and stuff. So we can use this to actually, the parent is going to play the role of a listener that listens for a specific event to be fired up, and from the child components we can just go in and fire up this event. We can pass him some data that we can actually use in a specific channel, or that the parents thing that gonna need. In our case, it's gonna need actually the city name, so we can pass him from the child to the parent, and he can actually get the data and refresh the whole things at the states and stuff like this. I'm not trying to do that. And as I've told you, whenever I try to render this, I'm going to pass in the event imager all the way down to all the children's. So this is going to be the case thing in here. I'm going to do it right over here. So we clone the elements. We're going to just pass in the state. But alongside the state, I'm going to do this dot, or I'm going to name something event imager. And I'm going to pass in the event imager. You can just go ahead and pass in only the on and the emit events. If you really performance friendly, don't really pass all the things into the hierarchy of your children, but it's okay for now for our application, and it's going to help us a lot for performance and stuff, so it's not really a big deal to be taken care of. Now we can just jump, since the up.jsx is this next thing is going to be rendered. So inside of this dot props, so remember it's going to be passed through all the props in here. We're going to get something like event.imager has the reference of the object that we have created up there. And actually we can get that really easily in here. Where is this? Okay. So once we get it, let me just think for a second where we're going to use this. I'm going to use it inside of the top section. So here I'm expecting to get from the props inside of the render. I'm going to do just to expect that we're going to get is like an event. Where is that? Imager. And it's going to be this dot props. But basically, I don't think I'm going to use it in here anyway. So just expect that we have is this way, and we can just go in and pass it. So I'm going to do event imager equals this dot props dot event imager. Remember that we have just passed it from there. So yeah, it's clearly the way that we should do that. We're going to get this event imager, but we first need to register a callback. Once we click the select button, we're going to get the data that is inside of this input. And how we can do that, I'm going to talk about this in a second. Let me just gonna first add on click callback inside of this. And I'm going to name this, for example, I'm going to do this dot on select city. On select city, okay, just keep it like this. I'm going to bind this to it. Okay, I'm going to add this boundary to it, and it's going to be select and everything. Hopefully, so we can go ahead and on select city. It's going to take in events and everything. We don't really care about the events, and we actually need to go ahead and do another method on city name change, or on location name change. So this can actually update every single time. Go ahead and update the state, and it's going to take in events. So it's going to be a change event from React. And every single time we update the input, this change event is going to be fired up, and we can go ahead and update the state with the new value that we've got from the input. And I'm going to have a change event in here. So on location name change, I'm going to bind the actual this callback. Okay, and as I've told you, it's going to get basically an event in here for the change. So I'm going to basically just go ahead and do this dot set the state, city name, or let's just go ahead and do its location name. It's going to be e.target, and I'm just going to fetch the value from the target. Target is actually representing the actual HTML and input elements, so it's the reference of it, and we can just access the value of it, the current value of it, as the mean time of receiving this particular event. And we just go ahead and just do it this dot set state, and we save that basically without any problems. Now hopefully it should work, but now we're actually gonna get the location name, like this text is gonna be saved inside of the location name of the state. So let me just go ahead and do this, reference it in here. It's gonna be location name this dot state. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the events imager that I get from the props. I can also go ahead and reference that. So event imager is going to equal this dot props. Remember that I've just passed this into it. I'm going to do events imager dots. And here we're going to emit an event. Remember, I'm going to emit an event. I'm going to give it a name of, or let me just do updates weather. So updates weather basically is I'm going to hear what data or type of data you want to pass it through. I'm going to just go ahead and pass an event or the actual city name that we have got, or location name. So remember, it's going to be location name, and that basically it. Now up in the hierarchy on the up.js, remember the up.js is actually the main component that is responsible for fetching the data and doing the states and doing all the changes and stuff like this. So what we can actually go ahead and do is just go in and do like components did mount. We register the event listener for this. So I'm gonna just right below this, I'm gonna go ahead and register the event emitter from this dot props. So I can reference that. So event imager is gonna equal this dot props, and down here event imager, I'm gonna listen for an event for a specific event name, which is gonna be where is this, update weather. Okay, and it's gonna be a callback. So here we're gonna get the actual data that we want, which is gonna be, just gonna name it data. There's gonna be an array, so we need to access the first step of the data. So I'm just gonna go in and do a console log of the data or location name, so to make sure that everything's pretty much working fine. And I'm gonna just do data, the 0th value, and this should actually return an object. And I'm gonna access, okay, let me, location name. So it's basically the API of how the event emitter works. It returns, or it gives you in here, inside of this callback, it's gonna give you an array of all of the data. So if you try in here to pass multiple things, you can do it. So remember, the first one is going to be the 0 index, and the other one is going to be the first index, and so on and so forth. So since we only have in one, it's still going to be an array anyway, but we need to access the first index of it. We fetch that, and it's going to return an object of all the data that is inside of that, and we can just go ahead and fetch the location name pretty simply. But let me just get rid of that. So I'm not pretty sure that's going to be an object anyway, but let's just go ahead and see. Compile that, go into here, and we can try to take a look on, just give it a quick look. What is this? So update weather, component date mount. Let me see this. I don't know. Kind of something not working. And yeah, it cannot actually read the property on of undefined. For some reason, the component date mount is not actually getting the event emitter data from the up that we are rendering. Let me take a look on the index.js. We're rendering the up. Okay, that's a kind of problem. I didn't do that. I talked about the store. We created the store and everything. So remember that we've created the store, and we meant to use the store like a Flux store. So we've got to use the store as a wrapper to render the application, but we didn't do that anyway. So I'm actually a fool or something. But let's try to go ahead and fix what we did. We can just go ahead, reference the store, we get the store, then we can, instead of the up in here, we need to use the wrapper, so it's actually to work as we expected it to be. So it's going to be the wrapper of things in here, and now hopefully it should work. If we jump in back in here, we take a look on the console log. We're not getting anything since we haven't done anything yet. Try to put some city name, for example. We're gonna put I don't know, Paris or something. Okay, try to click select, and there we go. We've got the location name. There we go, this is the location name. But even though that, we're only getting the P for some reason. We're not getting Paris, we're just getting the first character. So that's pretty nifty as well. Let me just check that again. Just getting P. That's really ridiculous. I think the problem in here, and it's not passing an array or something. I don't understand that, but the last time I used this, it was passing an array, believe it or not. But right now, all of a sudden, it decided not to pass an array. I'm gonna put a Paris again, select, and there we go, I've got Paris. So just ignore what I said. It won't pass an array or something. I don't know, I'm so confused. You can just go ahead and check out the documentation, but this is basically how it works. Now it works, we tested it, and everything is pretty much working fine. We can just go ahead and do the whole process, but the whole process is a little bit confusing, and it's gonna take us quite some time. So we can just copy this old code and ugly thing, and we can just put it in here, and so on and so forth, which is not what we want. So what we can do instead is actually just go ahead and set the state, and everything's going to be rendered for us, and the component is going to check. But in this case, we only put it this like the component date mount. So only when it tries to mount or something, it's not going to be, like you clearly see if you can take a look on documentation, call immediately after a component is mounted, setting state here will trigger a re-rendering. Only a re-rendering, but nothing completely different. So let's try now to go ahead to set the state. Enough talking. I'm gonna do set state. I'm gonna change the city name. I think I named it city name. Okay. I can put city name, and I can put the data. So basically what it is. Try to see if that works. Once we click, we input this new city name and we click select location. Does it gonna go ahead and change the location name and refresh for that? I'm not quite sure. Let's just go ahead and try to test this. I'm gonna say pairs, selects, and there we go. We've got that actually. So we've got pairs, we've got everything updated basically. Pairs as well as actually at night. We might want to choose something completely different like California or something, so to see a difference. I don't know how to spell California or something. But yeah, it's actually updating California, but it's not updating something like the Celsius or the degrees, and only updating the city name for some reason. So yeah, as I've told you, this is not as we expected it to be. So we need to move on this logic from here to a completely different thing. So we can just go ahead and create a function for it, and once we hit that, we can just go ahead and fire up this function. So I'm gonna do a function updates weather, and this update weather is, I'm just gonna take that's the whole thing of it, and I'm gonna paste it here. I'm just gonna copy that as well. It's all needed up there. So there's city name and everything, and I need to call this every single time that we want to update the video. So firstly, initially by default, once we get into the application without receiving any events or something, we want to update this so we get the initial thing. I'm gonna do updates weather, and actually after putting this dot state in, we set the city and we set actually the data. Now we've got to go in and update it, so we call this dot update weather, the method that we have just created up there. So what it does, just gonna go ahead and grab this URL, update it, it does the get request and everything, and later on it sets the state and updates every single thing. So this is what probably should do after setting the city name. So it takes the new city name from there and it updates it with this. But actually there's one single problem with this architecture we're thinking about. Remember that React, when it sets the state, everything is going to be asynchronous. So when asynchronous code gets executed, you can't actually know if the set state is going to be first or the update weather is going to be first executed. So yeah, this is really confusing. So you've got to go ahead and use the callback to help you that. And likely this dot point state or the set state method gives us that, and it provides you with a callback so you can just go ahead and use this. What you can do with this callback is actually when the state has been set and updated successfully, you can just go ahead and call this dot update weather. And this is what we're pretty much going to go ahead in here just by cutting the update weather, and we're going to go ahead and put this as the second parameter. So the set state method takes a second parameter, which is a callback that gets executed after the state has been set successfully. So it's a normal callback. I'm going to use weather or a row callback in here, and we just like update the weather. And once the city name has been updated with the data, we can just go ahead and update the weather. So the weather can know about the changes have been made to the city name. That was really important since we are using it in the update weather method, and we're distracting that, and we're doing the whole URL thing, we are including this data on it. It's really important to ensure first that the city name has getting updated on the state. Then later on, we can just go ahead and, get the data and fetch it from the API axios.com or something, the API, our RESTful API. Then we can just go ahead and update that. Let me just get rid of that. I don't really need it, and save. So it compiles that. Hopefully now, if you can take a look, the set state is actually going to do the job. And the update weather pretty much will get executed of the state has been successfully set, so there will be no problems. And we can just go ahead and refresh that. It loads the weather, we wait for it. Now we first need to try to set the state, and for example California, we can go in and do select. As you clearly see behind the scenes, it's changed. It changed the icon, it updated the degrees thing. Also the city name has been updated, and obviously the text that we have got in there, everything has been updated. Now, the actual way that we have thought about has been working actually very fine without any problems. You can, I don't know, use another thing or something by using this, but right now I'm thinking is actually when you get this pop-up, you click the select button, and actually the pop-up gonna be hide automatically. So try to add that. So we go into the index top components or the top section components, and I need to actually find the onClick method. So the pop-up container in here is going to happen is actually hide it once we select the container. So when we do that, hopefully we can go ahead and use this. So we can put is select options open, and we can put this to false. So once we click the select button, it's just gonna go ahead and false. That's pretty much what we're gonna do in here. Just go ahead and select that. You can clearly see London, and this London thing is gonna get it by default because we're having this inside of our state and it's sitting there by default. You can go ahead and change that by default, or better thing to do is actually you can get the location of the current user. This is actually what most of the weather application gonna do, and to do this in the browser is a little bit tricky, so you've got to get the permission for the getting the location and stuff. You can go ahead and do it using the JavaScript API. It's not a big deal or something. You can find a third-party library sitting there in npm and you can go ahead and use it very easily. But what I'm talking about is getting the weather. Now try to select it in here, as you can clearly see. But we've got a bug, so I think I put this in the wrong place. Yeah, you shouldn't put that on select location name change. So actually you need to find select city. So there we go. This is the method that we wanna hide the pop-up. So we can go ahead and do this .set state, and actually we can put a selection pop-up open, and we can just set it false. This is basically what we want once we select the city, or to be able to say once we push the button, we do that, and actually we have to emit the event before that. So refreshing, just wait for this, and I don't know, I'm having 2 instances of this. Now try it again, California. Once we select that, there we go. The pop-up gonna be automatically hidden for us, and this is a really awesome user experience. So this is actually what you should be doing care about. Better thing or better user experience, you can have like a close button inside of the pop-up, and you can just go ahead and let the user exit the pop-up. The time doesn't allow us to do so, so you can just go ahead and ignore this. Now let me change it to 4 days because this is going to use, instead of 5 days, it's quite a lot. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to work on the bottom section and try to display up to 4 days of forecast. So from today and the next 4 days, and we can just go ahead and do that. So the bottom section, we try to add inside of the container, like add the ending div or the closing tag of that. And we try to add the bottom container. But actually here, what we first need to do is actually get another component that gets rendered. So obviously what you need to do is get the forecast day, which is like an array, and basically just go ahead and use a map function, or it's basically a for loop, and loop on each one of them and return that so you can easily render them. So I'm going to add a new component. I'm going to name it forecast day.jsx, and this is going to render a single forecast day, and we're going to have 4 forecast days going to be rendered there. Clearly see here I have an array. So I'm going to simply just type in import React from React. This is the usual thing for creating a component, and we can go in and export a default like forecasts, I don't know, day, or you can use days or something in his. I don't know. Let's go in and just put it like this way, non-capital, and we can extend the components. Simply you're just creating a normal class components. So constructor with the props and super. With props too, since we're going to need the props in this case, because we're going to pass in the data inside of the props, and this data is going to be actually the forecast day data, so we're going to get that, and actually we use the render to return the actual structure of this. So if we can take a look, I've got in here like a simple container that shows the forecast day, that we can actually copy the CSS code from Figma. As you can clearly see in here, they're in the right side, and we can, I don't know, for example, display the degrees and show up an image, or simply just show up the text in there. Like for example, it's cloudy or sunny, or something like this, or overcast or anything like that. So we can jump back in here. Let's try now to go ahead and render a div with a class name, and for example, we're gonna put forecast day dash container. So it's going to be actually the container for the whole thing that's going to be inside of that. We can have another div which is going to be the image, so it's going to be the container of the image, and we can have another one which is let's try something like text. Okay, so it's going to be image and text, and here we're going to test with an image, so simply you can just go ahead and put an image. Let me just go back in here and try to copy the URL for this, just for testing purposes. As I've told you before, you always need to test your your code, your components that gets rendered in something. Then you can integrate or invoke them with APIs. So yeah, the APIs with the dynamic data comes at the end. You can put sunny there. Now we can jump, I don't know, the forecast day container in here. We can jump to the style.css. For the bottom, it is actually instead of the bottom, you can put an image, and since the image actually the class name, and we can have also the text, which is also a class name in here, the main container for the text we're gonna put. And I'm gonna have an image tag. Since it's gonna have an image tag, obviously the width is gonna be 100%. Relatively gonna take the full width and the full height of the main container, which is the image container. And here we can have, for example, I don't know, let's look on the size of this. I just want to make it a little bit smaller than the top section image that we have got in there. So I don't know, try it for width about 2 m and height exactly 2 m. I don't know, that sounds decent. For the text, we might want to set the font size. Okay, let's try font size, or yeah, okay, font size. Let's try 12 pixels, okay. That should be decent, like 12 pixels, and we can save that. Now we've got to go ahead and use the components and actually render it. But before so, we've got to first get the data from the main application. What I mean by data is actually when we fetch the data from the RESTful API, we are pretty much going to pass this data as a prop to the bottom container. Then actually on the bottom container, we can go ahead and do a for loop, as I've told you, or a map function. And this actually, we're going to use a map function because on React, when you try to loop an array, you've got to use map functions. So we can jump back in here. As you can clearly see, we need to go into, I don't know, the app.jsx in here. And once we update the weather API, we've got to put another data for the forecast day. So let me just go and name forecast days. It's going to be an array, as we have seen in there, since we are already getting an array. So this is basically it. We're going to just save on the state an array. You can clearly see in here, we've got the forecast, then the forecast days, which is an array. Yeah, so we're going to just save that. So we've got to first access data, forecast, and forecast days. Okay, so yeah, that should be actually it. And we just actually access the objects that we are gonna get. Now on the bottom section, we can go ahead and pass in as a prop. So we can do forecast days equals this. I don't know, we can use this structure. Let me just put that first, and I can copy this and then just put in the state in here, like we've got a structure. Yeah, I've got already the state in here. I don't know what I'm doing, but so I need to put forecast days, or I basically named it forecast days with no capital D in the middle. But yeah, actually I think I have some kind of a name convention, but okay, never mind. I'm gonna just put that. And now what we're expecting inside of the bottom section components is actually, we're gonna distract this from the props. So the forecast days, and simply we're gonna do this dot props. So now we can take this, and remember we've got an array inside of that. Let me first just import the components, which is going to be the forecast day components from the file that we have just created. So okay, there we go. We just import that, and simply we've got an array in here, and inside of the array there's a couple of objects. Each object is going to represent a single day on the forecast. So once you request something like 5 or something we're requesting for, you're going to get this exact 4 days inside of the forecast. So yeah, it's pretty simple. Let me just go ahead and change this because it's a little bit annoying. So the naming convention, I'm going to change it to 4. And of course I've got like forecast days. Let me change it to num forecast days. So it's a little bit much better for a naming convention because we've got another variable in the state named the same thing, like forecast days, which is an array. We don't really want to put that. So you already have to know how to name your variables, because that's a really important thing when dealing with an application, especially if it's large or a complicated project thing. So components nested inside of each other's. If you try to look in here, so we're going to do just the forecast days in here. So we've got to first wrap this. I can't do that, so we've got to go ahead and do like the escape inside of the GSX. And here instead of the map function, we're gonna get a callback that gets called with each element out of the array. So you can just remember or take this as a for loop, even though you can use a for loop inside of a JSX to render things. So the only way to render an array and loop on each item and render that each item context, so you've got to use a map function. So this is basically why map functions exist in ES6, and they are very powerful. A lot of people use them. So we can get the date, the index. Now we've got to go ahead and do, it's just like go and return each component, or for each object inside of that, just return a new component, which is going to be the forecast day. So remember that it actually takes a couple of data from the props. So we're going to go ahead and pass it. Let me just get them. I need to make this dynamic so we can go ahead and use this. But for now, let's go and try to use this for testing purposes. And it should pretty much work fine. I just put the key, and the key actually gonna tell React how to organize things, especially when you use them inside of the map. So they're all gonna be stacked above each other's, and the key gonna let React differentiate between them and allow us to optimize the application and the rendering process. And now it's actually loading, but I think it's kind of a stuck or something. I don't know. It's taking quite some time actually to load the weather, and it's stuck on the loading weather screen. Try to refresh that. Take a look, sneak look on that, and there we go. We've got actually an error. So the error says it's actually on the bottom container, and we've got cannot read properly map of undefined. So for some reason the forecast days is actually undefined, and let me just take a look on that. So I think the props now are being passed undefined, and everything is actually working fine here, but yeah, I think so. Let's go and try to use an AND in here. So to make sure that only access the map function once the forecast day is actually available, otherwise don't access it. So it's really important to do so on a React application, especially when you're using a loading screen or something like this. The props not going to be layout, or when you actually use the RESTful APIs, this really helps. So let's try. I think it's not working. It's still stuck for some reason, and there's actually kind of a really annoying error in here. Take a look on the errors, and I clearly see. So the weight data from the API cannot read properly forecast day if undefined. Okay, so we've got some kind of an error in our API that we're trying to parse the JSON data that we are getting from the RESTful API, and I think everything looking pretty much fine in here. But when we set the data, the forecast, I think I'm missing an E in here. So the forecast, I'm misspelling a forecast. Okay, that's actually pretty great. I'm misspelling that and forgetting an E in the middle. So I'm just gonna put forecast day here. Just fix that. I'm gonna fix that as well. The key that we're sending is out of the state. Also, we're gonna go ahead and then just fix that as state. Fix that on the bottom container, or pretty much the bottom section. And also we can fix that all over the way on all the components in here. Now that should do pretty much the job, because it's just like a syntax error, nothing more, nothing less. But okay, try to refresh that. Either we get something. There we go. We've got actually a really awesome thing. So it's like sunny, 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 but all of them are structured, or put it like in a vertical line. So it's getting the data, but not perfectly. So yeah, it's not perfect as we wanted. And also we're having a static data in here, so it's not really that much what we want. We need to change this and make it look much better on the sunny components in here. But as I've said, it's working pretty much fine as far as I can see in here. And we need to structure that and fix the style a little bit so it looks a bit more awesome. You can change the background in there. Like you can find a really better background, but this is doing the job. Okay, now try to use this and try to fix the style. So I'm gonna put a display flex for the actual container, the main container, the forecast day container. I'm gonna use flexbox. It's a great way for dealing with your elements. I'm gonna do flex direction. I'm gonna keep them actually in row. For a reason, I'm gonna put a justify contents in center. And I'm gonna put also the align items. I'm gonna like align them vertically and horizontally. So align items center. I'm gonna do the job perfectly. Hopefully over that. We're actually getting them centered horizontally, but not vertically, and they're not displayed in a row. So for some reason that's not actually happening as we want it to be. So there's clearly some issue in our style, and we have to just go ahead and fix that. So yeah, that's really a little bit annoying. Let's try to add another inner container. So it's gonna be working as an inner container that wraps all of the data that we have got in there. It's always better to add an inner container instead of your main container, which is in this case the bottom container. So this inner container can hold the data, hold whatever you're rendering, especially when you're using a map and rendering an array, looping through it. So we can put the style in here, make it like wraps the whole image and the text and everything. We can move all the display flex inside of that, and let me just make the width and the full height. So from the forecast container, and pretty much this should do the job perfectly for us for taking the full width and the full height. Also the inner container, I don't know, that seems a little bit compromised. It's taking the full height actually, it's actually a lot of height actually taking it, but still not displaying as we want it to be. So let me just double check that. The best way is actually to use an inspect, and I'm gonna just dive into the hierarchy of the rendering and take a look on our elements, try to fix the CSS styles. It looks like all of them are taking the full width and the full heights for each forecast day in here, each forecast container, and that is not what we exactly wanted to do. That seems a little bit of a misunderstanding if we try to do in here. And also the inner container is actually taking the full width for some reason, so that seems a little bit annoying. Okay, let's take a look on the style.css, and I don't know, that's a little bit weird. I've got all of that. Okay, I totally forgot about that. So I'm just going to take the inner container and put it up because it doesn't belong inside the forecast day container. So it actually belongs inside the bottom container. That's my bad. It's not a child of the forecast day container. Instead, it's a child of the bottom container. And it completely misunderstood that. Now, it somehow looks a little bit as we wanted, but not exactly. There's still a couple of things to do. And yeah, we actually need to put them in the center, but they're not perfectly centered. And I think the problem is, let me take a look. That's so full width, side of here. I think the problem is we're just putting the full width and the full height, but the forecast containers, each one of them is taking the full width and the full height. Let me just try to put none items to center, and to completely center them. I'm not putting display flex in there. That's clearly annoying when you try to working with the styles. So each one of these are taking the full width. What I want is actually to center them. So that's a little bit off when it comes to dealing with the CSS styles and rendering data from an array and trying to take care of that. Let's try now to hook up the API and try to push or pretty much push the props. I'm gonna name this day. I'm gonna call it day, and I'm just gonna pass in the day to the actual forecast. Now we can change from the static text that we put it, and we could use actually the props from the dynamic data that we've got from the RESTful API, and that should do the job perfectly. So we're gonna get the day, and here we also need to change the static image, the static icon to, let me take a look on that. For temporary, we've got an average temporary, so we can use this. So we can do, I don't know, day dot average temporary. You can use a max or a minimum temporary, but okay, that's pretty decent. We can just go ahead and use an average temporary. There's plenty of data you can go ahead and render, but let's just go ahead and make it simple for now. You can also go to the condition. We can grab the icon. So I'm gonna access icon, and yeah, let's try to refresh that. Okay, there's actually nothing being displayed on the API, and like we are getting nothing. So let me just double check that. It looks a little bit like there's something wrong with here. Yeah, the condition is actually missing. And here for the average temperature, yeah, we've got an error like day.condition.icon. You cannot access the property of undefined. And I think there's a problem when it comes to props, and since we're using the layout-in, but I don't know, I think gonna return a null if there's no day, and if actually the day has been received and undefined, we're just gonna return null, so we're not gonna render anything because the RESTful API hasn't sent a response back to us and hasn't responded anyway with the data that we need. So therefore we might use that, but taking a look inside of this, the condition seems fine. And yeah, I think we've got a day. That's what we're missing actually. So we need to access the day property, which is the object that holding all this data. So we can do this in here like data, or we can just go back in here. We say day.day, and actually we can pass in the current day. So I mean the objects of the day. So it has an object of the day, and it has a couple of things like the day, time, and stuff like this. And there we go. It works pretty much now. We get the icon. We get the the average temperature. Just getting like a little bit like a floating point or the double point, but that's not really a big deal. You can go ahead and change it, or you can show both the minimum temperature and maximum temperature. And let me try to fix or play around with the CSS style in here, so hopefully you can fix that. And the width is actually not taking the full width and the full height. Let me just try to it's 3 AM or something, just give it a custom width and a custom height. I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, so it's taking the full width and the full height, both of them being aligned. I don't know, some reason it's not working. Let's try to put display flex, justify content to the center, and also align the items to the center. There we go. Now we've got them actually perfectly aligned, because they weren't aligned as we want them to be inside of the forecast container, and it wasn't actually putting a flex or a display flex. That's my bad, and this is the problem I've got. And now it should pretty much do the job perfectly. Let's try to copy that, and let me just take this a little bit up, the actual width of that. Now copy the CSS styles. Can go inside of the forecast container. Can just overwrite all of the data, and now it should work pretty much fine. So take a look in here. Try, I don't know, let me take a look and put a color in here, FFF, because the color is not exactly matching as we want it to be, since the background is not the best thing for this dark gray color. Now the white color might look a little bit better, but we still need to upgrade or take the width and the height of the image just a little bit up. That's quite a lot, so I can take it 3.2. Let's try this. That's still ridiculously, I don't know, a lot. Just 3 would do the job, okay? And there we go. That seems much more interesting than it was. And it actually displays everything perfectly. It gets the forecast and it gets everything. The API is working. We can actually pass the props. You can add another one, which is going to name it, for example, muted text. And this one going to have actually the text for your day, for example, sunny or cloudy or something like this, like the condition of that. So you can put the condition.text inside of this, and I can make sure that it's like exactly inside of the condition. Now we can go in here, add the class of muted text. And we can add, I don't know, the font size of this is going to be, let's put 12 and see, the color is going to be, okay, let's try something like a little bit darker than the FFF or something. I'm trying to call the color picker. There we go, we've got the color picker now. And try to figure out something like darker gray, not completely white, but something that could do the job. Try this. Okay, let's take a look on the style. Yeah, we've got the dark gray, but it's not looking great as we expected it to be. So let's go and try just change it back to the white, just completely white, FFF. Okay, that does the job perfectly now. And let me just take this down to 10 pixels. And yeah, that sounds pretty great. So 10 pixels does the job perfectly, and the style now we've got is actually pretty cool. So yeah, everything seems to be nice. We've got the icons, we've got the weather. You can just go ahead and, as I've said, you can put the current location and everything going to be automated for you. But if you take a look on the app.sass in here, let me just take the heights of the application so it looks way much better. There we go. Now it looks like much better with the image in the background and the the forecast of the days and the weather, the current weather. All the information now is listed. And that's pretty much it for the weather application. That was actually a very basic thing. Just want to point you guys to creating a weather application. Hopefully you actually enjoyed the video tutorial. I'm IPNOS, so you can go ahead and check out my channel down in the description. You're going to find the code in the repository, and on GitHub you can also find the link in the description below. Actually, it's, I think, it contributed to freeCodeCamp, so hopefully you liked it. If you like more videos like this, let me know in the comments, and I'll be very happy to do so. And yeah, also you can just go ahead and check out ipnos.com with a really awesome much more tutorials like that. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching this video again. Hopefully guys you have enjoyed that, and see you all hopefully in another video tutorials like this.